started coming up when the uprising of youth came in, because they tried to look to say, yes, you are teaching us all these things, but how do they assist me as an individual? A lot of aspects will be there when you will learn about the Anglo-Boer War, but nothing has to do with African. So does it mean only the Europeans have history and Africans do not have history? Because those were elements that were really popping up. So then when they create these elements of reforms, they were trying to bring on the table elements of inclusivity to ensure that the curriculum that we are sharing needs to really incorporate both sides of the coin, not just one-sided, wherein we can also learn issues of African origins, which are the ones that we have within our blood flowing. The issue of democracy, and also what does it mean? Because sometimes we find ourselves in democracy, but we ourselves, we find ourselves not understanding. What does that even mean for us? So those were elements that were added, as well as issues of knowing our own human rights. So at South Africa, human rights are also one of the priorities that everyone needs to know. It doesn't matter where you are, all your rights needs to be exercised fully. Sorry. Then this as well also led to the expansion of a higher education. By higher education, we mean the education provided within colleges, within universities, within technicons that we have, because we have about 3 spheres. We have University of Technology, we have the colleges, as well as the comprehensive universities that are there. So this, on the lighter note, was the way of trying to dismantle and the racialization of the schools. And I mean, as much as we have not suffered having to be knowing that this school is for blacks, this school is for whites. By the time we grew up, that was at least better. We could find an Indian at the same school as we're learning a white person and so on. However, treatment differed. It wasn't the same. And then we knew certain things would not come if it's raised by a black person. But if it's raised by another race, then you find that everything comes handy. So those were issues that we found ourselves suffering. So I want just a quick share of the 2 elements wherein we have certain aspects that normally I won't dwell much on the Bantu education, because most of those things at least you heard about yesterday. So I want to just focus on what seems to be the evolution, what came after the post-1994, which then we had issues that now the education was more focused on equity, democracy, as well as empowerment. And then education was prescribed as a human right, wherein to make matters easier, even accessing schools became free of charge, so that everyone can have access to school. And you can't say education is a human right while somebody still has to buy it. So hence the element now of changing the narrative from a pay as you enter to then free access to education. Then the only element that comes was just when you go at least to a higher education, then because of choices, then you might go to those which you want to pay, or you can choose to access the ones that are accessible and you can get government subsidy to enter. So those are elements that then rose and come to life. Then we also, I think that talks to the universal access as well as formal disaggregation. And this really, as much as it has shown a rise in better access, but we all know, as I indicated before, the issue of inequalities still remain. But it's things that even over time, that was the issue that we are still battling with. And I think when I can tell you, in South Africa, about 80 to 85% population, it's blacks. However, out of that population, the minority are the ones that are more wealthier than the South Africans themselves, which means within the about less than 15% or so, those are the people who carries the majority of the wealth of the country. And then when themselves are also minority. But the key individuals who are the dweller and the owners of the land are the ones that are still trying to push the means of living to the level that we can all say we are happy and then we have made it. So we are still far from making it as a country, as individuals. Then I think another element was the inclusivity, the issue of broader, and then we started having outcome-based curriculum, wherein they started looking to say, why don't we look at a curriculum that looks at to say, what is it that we want to achieve? And then how do people start learning to be outcome-based in their thought? But this, at the same time, when it was being done, at a later stage, it was changed. When it was changed, then we had a different curriculum that then now provides individual with more open thinking, which is not really secluded to only what you want to see happening tomorrow. But you can open your brain, you can look beyond just the outcome that you have in mind now. So that now grew the education to a level wherein now we are in, and then we can even compete internationally when it comes to research, when it comes to qualifications that we offer. And that attracted also the element of standing firm when it comes to our own multilinguality. Because we have a country that within itself, it has more than, I think, 17 languages. Of them, about 12 are official languages of the country, over and above English, which I think that also brought even the sign language to become the 12th official language in the country. And that is the part of inclusivity that we're talking about. And as much as we move on, back then, people were not allowed to learn their mother tongue. I mean, your own mother tongue, you couldn't learn it at school. And you have to be saying, I am a vendor person, but at the same time, you can't even learn your language. But then when we moved to our era, then those things, at least we had the liberty of having to enjoy learning our own languages the same way you learn whether English or you choose Afrikaans. And then Afrikaans was never, back then Afrikaans was a must for everyone, as you had previously yesterday from those who lived within the era. But now even English was not a must back then. Africans, which was the ones who colonized us, were the ones who took the upper hand, and the language was prescribed for everyone. But during our era, we had the beauty of enjoying learning all these languages that we have in South Africa. And we are now, we can speak our language purely, and we can go from idioms, any way, how you use the English, how they learn English, you can learn your own language freely. Then, so the other issue that then came was just the issue of investment into different spaces. and different types of schools. However, even though there is that investment, the investment differed between urban and the more rural or remote areas. The remote and rural areas remain suffering, although we had access to a lot of issues. But when it comes to the quality of education provided in these two spaces, urban versus rural, there was a lot of space that multiple trucks or a whole train can pass in. And you won't even think there was anything that has passed. That is how far the two are. But as much as time is moving, that development is coming, but it is moving at a snail pace movement. So which means as much as we go into the right direction, the pace that is given for the most rural or remote areas is not the same as what is happening in the other areas. So we then have expanded opportunities, but I think I need to emphasize that as much as that is there, it's a progress which we really value. However, as long as we're still having the inequalities available, it's still a struggle that we need to take forward in one way or the other. And that brought the issue of dual education, because there is others who have the means and others who do not have. So that means we are still having the dualism, although we can see some progress. So then, just to bring the element of saying, then this changes in democracy brought a lot of elements that has to do with how we outgrow our education into ensuring how it includes the Afrocentric approaches. And in most cases, when we look at our curriculums, then we started having, as I mentioned earlier, our African literature coming on board. And that's when we enjoyed a lot of poems, a lot of things that sometimes, those, the folklores, if people understand what folklores are. So those are issues that you never enjoyed in peace, except when you're doing them at home, because the elders, when they sit at night, that's what they need to feed us with. But we had no recollection, because it will end there at home, but the generations were going, and as they are going, who's there to ensure that those things stay afloat? So that segregation made sure that we don't learn that, but at least luckily this assisted. So the issue of indigenous knowledge system also came in. And then as it came in, that gave rise, I think even Dr. Molife also understands, he's been there in South Africa when much of the indigenous knowledge systems were being introduced in different higher education institutions. And there have been even courses or qualifications specifically looking at indigenous knowledge systems, which that became something. And then the language, as I indicated, I'm not going to go through it again. And then the African philosophy as well, the Ubuntu, also now is at the center of South Africa. And I think when it started, people were not really looking at it during the era of Desmond Tutu. He talked about it as until it was even taken. And then hence I even mentioned that the Truth and Reconciliation was surrounded around the philosophy of Ubuntu. And then hence, I think Desmond Tutu became also one of the key figures that advocated for Ubuntu. Then the issue of integration of African epistemologies, which then were included into the social sciences, the sciences themselves, as well as also the arts curriculum. Because sometimes you wouldn't be an artist if your focus is based on African culture. Normally, you can go and do acting and so on. Those were good. Why? They are not African. right? But the other aspect, imagine the nature of art. If we look at our clothes, African clothes, just looking at it, you see art. You don't need to even think. When you look at our way of dressing, it's artistic in nature. But that wasn't the thing. I mean, there's nothing you can look that is African that you don't see art in it. And then which is something that was inborn, but it was oppressed not to come out, you know. So I think this is where the element of decolonization became a key word that was being utilized. Yet, because as a person, I had a challenge with the term decolonization, because you've been a person before, right? So it's just bringing back what was there. Not necessarily, you are not changed. It's just that you were adapted into something that you are not, right? So, but we took it along. We went with it because it's something that was there. But if you have to look down to say, what does it mean to be decolonized? Then you get a different understanding. Because you are African, you were never changed to be something, you're still an African. So that is something that needed to be strengthened and carry on. So as much as we're talking about a lot of aspects, then there are a lot of issues that are there, which I'm not going to dwell much on them, but I think we need to know that there have been structural inequalities that were there, as well as also language challenges. As much as we say in those languages were put there, it was not easy to really have them recognized, because at the same time, English stayed and dominated. It's like we moved away from English and then we upgraded. We moved away from Afrikaans and we upgraded English. But we couldn't upgrade one of our own to become there on the top. So hence I'm saying the challenges were still there. Then the teacher training gaps, because even though these whole things were changing, was the pedagogies that were given during apartheid, did it change now that we have moved to post-apartheid? It took longer for those teaching methods to change. So that also, it means the same type of teaching that they were getting, also some of us did get them. Until now, when at least there is more flexible changes. So another aspect is issues of globalization. And I think with those who are in higher education institutions know that it's a competition. You need to benchmark what is this university doing, which is better than us. And then sometimes we miss the opportunity of understanding your uniqueness because of what? Wanting to fit in. Yes, we understand we need to be globally recognized, but can we be globally recognized with things that we can own up to, not as a copycat? Because that is an element that we are losing at most areas. So we want to be Africans, but at the same time, we have to be showing some westernized way of doing things. I mean, here I am, I'm wearing a suit. All right? I mean, I could have been purely on my traditional attire, right? But here I am, I'm wearing a suit. But there are things that we need to be utilizing. But again, what makes us stand out? And that's what even the institutions that we are copying at, they are making sure you feel, or this one, if it's Harvard, you know, right? But they are maintaining their own standard. Can't we maintain our own standard, not being copycats, but ensuring that whatever that we are holding on is the one that is going to raise our name and stay up there? And I think I was happy when a lot of talks where nobody is opposing the BLAC Report, but ensuring or within it, we need to ensure that all those recommendations sees the light of day. Are we clear? So, and that is the bottom line. Unlike trying to say, no, Mara, I think this country has moved from this. No, let's finish what we have at the table and then be happy with what the outcome is. So the issue of community perceptions, sometimes we ourselves, there are people who can have done a postdoc somewhere, but just because the institution is not really valued, us ourselves will be saying, where? Oh, she went to this institution. Have you even heard of that institution? But that institution is what built that person. That time that person was attending. So, but again, this is what we as Blacks have as a problem. I can rather go to UCLA and do my postdoc than go to any other institution in Africa for my postdoc. Why? I did not realize, I'm saying this, I'm also being the victim. I did my postdoctoral studies in UCLA. However, when I try to look at it to say, okay, I did that. Yes, there are skills that I've learned there, all right? But how much of them assist me in my country? Because even when I'm learning them there, even the ways of attracting funding, it's different. When I'm here, I have to be talking the language up there. I come and write the grant proposal with that language. And my application just came back rejected because they are not understanding. And it took me a longer time. I used to write a lot. And it took me a longer time to say, no, let me go back to the community. Let me hear what people are saying. Right? That's when I started getting lucky. And I mean, in my own country. But I could apply internationally and get funded with the same thing that is rejected at home. But that tells me that sometimes you need to be locally relevant. You can go and learn everything, but if you are not locally relevant, you have a problem. So which is one element that we need to also embrace. And I think through learning and through this process, those are things that I started seeing coming out and learning from them. So then we do have some of the impacts that we saw, and I think we need to also embrace them. When the higher education of South Africa really did a lot when it comes to element of decolonization of the curriculums that were there, and most of them had to integrate indigenous knowledge systems. That became a module that everyone had to do. It's not for credit, but you had to have it. What does that mean? That means so long you are coming to the university, you will be having some knowledge of indigenous knowledge system, you like it or not, all right? That was what was enforced. And I think the shift meant that we are going to validate African epistemologies and we promote cultural pride, because as much as those indigenous knowledge systems were being provided, they were not similar for every institution. And I need to unpack what do I mean by they are not similar. Because we have 9 provinces. And in the 9 provinces, the province that I come from, it's Limpopo province. It's the one bordering Zimbabwe and Botswana as well as Mozambique. It's just enshrined by the 2 countries, the 3 countries. But within it, we have about 6 languages or 6 cultures. which that means, or that was the hardest hit when it comes to indigenous knowledge module, because it needs to accommodate all 6 cultures. But when you come to others, you find they only speak one language. Like if we are looking at Northwest province, which it's only Tswana speaking, we have KZN, which is only Zulu. We have Eastern Cape, you find now the mixture of Zulu and Xhosa, and Western Cape, the same, but now there you also have the rise of Afrikaans, because we have coloureds as well as Afrikaner speaking, right? So those were the issues that came to ensure that each institution was catering the cultures that are within. And that really assisted in ensuring that each province now understand their own culture from the perspective, because you can't bring somebody from Limpopo to go teach Zulus their own culture. But you can do it in your own space. So then it then creates a more locally relevant approach to indigenous knowledge. And then these reforms responded to the demand for curricula. And I think it reflected the African realities, because as much as that was happening, we were starting to see that we can do better with our own languages, with our own African knowledge systems, because we do have. It kept our forefathers long enough to be where we are now. And why can't we take it forward? So this is just the issue that I'm bringing to say a lot of institutions adopted the IKS and as well as African heritage. As much as I'm here, I just missed our Heritage Day, which was on the 24th. So I was somewhere in Germany by then. Others were enjoying their heritage and I was coming here. But it didn't bother me much, because what I was coming for, it's more heritage as compared to what I left there. So then I want to say that the term heritage sometimes is a term that was tried by many people to be pushed away. And I think even in our country, this day has also become the National Bride Day, so that majority know it nowadays as a National Bride Day and not as a heritage. And it's a way of also confusing the system, because National Bride Day means everyone is buying meat. I mean, it's like National Barbecue Day, right? And from heritage to barbecue. So something is not right. Right? Because I feel heritage carry more weight, and that day was made a space. Why didn't they choose another day for barbecue than to use our own National Heritage Day for that? You know, I mean, Heritage Day carries weight, but National Barbecue Day, it's like we're playing. But what can we say? So I think I'm sorry for the whiteness of I'm apologizing for that, of the text, because I think it's giving a challenge to read. But I think what is just there is just to show that the institution, I didn't put all the institution, I just put a few, but if we look South African institution, they all have African heritage and indigenous knowledge systems embedded into their modules at this stage. So which is something that is a plus for us, and as well as when you are moving into research, be it your teaching and learning and so on, but you will need to have emphasis on how you apply the African heritage. I think in 2009, I think there was a first a bachelor's degree in IKS, which was offered by University of Venda, and among others that were there in other institutions. And I think this on its own, it embraced the African heritage, the African medicine, the indigenous and environmental knowledge issues, as well as the cultural practices. Because sometimes, if somebody is going into music now, normally they're going to teach you to dance similar way, the choreographer or something. They will teach you similar direction, but it can also be done in an African way. It can be done in an African way, and that can still suffice. So, one of the presenters yesterday has a chair, which that chair is for Ubuntu model of healthcare. By that, it means it's prioritized to have even centers, institutes, which deals specifically with African heritage or indigenous knowledge system at this stage. So when one looks back and see where we come from, this is a plus because it was never there. So I think the first speaker from South Africa, Prof. Mraudzi, she is running a such a chair on Ubuntu model of healthcare. So that means it's providing healthcare, but within the vicinity of Ubuntu philosophy. So these are just elements that we are looking at. Even now as a University of Venda, we have two niche areas where in all research that you do within our institution, the institution that I come from, it's based on African heritage and IKS. That is the niche number one. Niche number two is One Health. But even when you're looking at this One Health is not taking away. Remember, even in African nature, you don't just kill an animal, all right? Because there is a lot of interconnectedness, right, between humans, animal, plants, as well as the environment itself. So with this, one can see that much of everything is now rotating, moving back into ensuring that what was is today. I'm not sure if what I said makes sense. But the statement I'm trying to bring is that what used to be is what we are going to again now. And just as I'm closing up, I think there's been a growth in some career pathways which are looking at specific African heritage and IKS, as well as some skills relevance that we have seen and then working with. However, we still have some shortfalls there and there. And then again, there is also an element which is still not really coming out through, which is the employability part. Because some of the companies will not see it fit, okay, you did indigenous knowledge and we are doing iPhones. What will be your role? All right, I'm just saying that as an example to say sometimes those then limit, because you would have skills on this, but now we're having more technology based. But now we are going to be utilizing that as elements of saying, even our technological tools needs to also respect what? Our African traditions. So I think in conclusion, I think the education that we underwent reflects mostly oppression, at the same time some resilience, because for it to be where it is now, it took a lot of fights, it took a lot of war, it took a lot of bridges and walls that had to be put down for us to reach where we are today. And then the reforms that were done for curriculums, they really make strides. But as I have noted, there is a couple of inequalities that are still there. So Ubuntu-centered framework really shown to bring about some form of healing, because some people might still be holding each other by washings, but that's not happening. Hence, I indicated the issue of a rainbow nation, regardless of how the past used to be. Education is purely the key that we need to use to this democracy, as well as ensuring the inclusive future. And then this is just something that I am saying to you to say the journey of us in South Africa, from oppression of Bantu education to liberation of Afrocentric, Ubuntu-centered approaches, shows us that reclaiming our history, heritage, and indigenous knowledge, it's not just about the past. It is about building futures where African identity becomes a source of strength, innovation, and employability. Just as South Africa is transforming its education to honor its people, we in the diaspora must also affirm that everything about us, our heritage, our language, our philosophy, is valid knowledge that empowers us to thrive in this modern world. And education is not only about skills for survival, but also reclaiming our own dignity, our heritage, and our future. Let us, wherever we are in South Africa or in the diaspora, carry the spirit of Ubuntu, knowing that when we honor our roots, we empower generations to rise higher. Thank you. I think I'm safe to go.
Thank you. Yes, I want to thank you very much for a very dynamic and very powerful presentation. Really appreciate it very much. And I made an exclamation when you mentioned UCLA, and that exclamation was an indication to you that I too am aware of the power of what I call the Pan-European Academy, as Chinwezu called it. And my question to you is one that, as Afrocentrists, we deal with all the time, is how do we challenge this Pan-European Academy, and what are the standards, the kinds of institutions that we must build to get rid of this particular approach to universalism that the Western world has, through its own particular cultural experience, put on the rest of the world?
Yeah, I think that's a very key question, because I think as it happens, when they're preparing you, I remember when they prepare you from lower grades to high school, they're preparing you for a pan-European education so that at least you can fit in. But what is missing at this stage is an element of saying, even though we are saying we're having Afrocentric approaches, when do we introduce them to these individuals? Because if we are not introducing them at the lower grades and they're growing with these elements, where do they go? If where they are going, they won't even meet that. So that means that it won't assist us. So we need to start by ensuring the ground level, the foundation is well built. So that even now, even people now who are choosing to do IKS as a degree, they don't have the grounding from the foundation. They're just picking it up. So which also becomes a challenge of saying, what is your pathway or articulation? You have this degree now, then what? You're getting my point. So I think the basis that we need to is to start at the ground level and ensure that we can also put the African heritage, the indigenous knowledge into the curriculum from the lower grades so that they don't just meet it at the university. Then the university, if that is done under they know the caliber of students that they are waiting for. So hence that will strengthen also us putting Africentric approaches at a higher level. So that at least even when we're looking at the issue of job opportunities, because at this stage, even when people, they still go back and you find they're becoming now entrepreneurs. Why? Because there is nothing in the market for a heritage or indigenous knowledge system, except if you are bringing your own herbs that you can prove, then I have followed a scientific method of coming up with these herbs, right? So the challenge is that we still have a lot of work, wherein we need to bridge the foundation, even the academic higher education system, as well as where do these people go when they complete.
Question for me, and that is there any institution that you can think of in South Africa or in the African continent where you can get confirmation or value from an indigenous knowledge system? Is there any Afrocentric, for example, university that will say, we confirm that this person is okay?
I would take you to your Zululand. They just started, but I think they are making strides and in the right direction, which I think you all know even what they call themselves, because they are a beacon. They see themselves as beacon, looking at how far they've come. So I'm looking at it as the University of Zululand becoming that light that will also shine for other institutions to ensure that we can all reach there. But I would say at this stage, we can't be fully sure that can happen, but we are getting there. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm switching roles. Yeah, so at this stage, I think we will be welcoming Dr. Tinga to introduce the speakers as well as take us through as the moderator of this session. Thank
you. Good morning in Halifax and good afternoon in South Africa. My name is Dr. Masuta Tingaham Cecilia. I'm here with the panelists who are going to participate this morning. We are going to focus on the issues around Nelson Mandela, South Africa, and the diaspora. So I will start with Dr. Tendo Geti Makado. Dr. Geti Tendo Makado is a rightful rated junior lecturer in the Department of Advanced Nursing Sciences at the University of Venda, South Africa. Dr. Makado holds a PhD in nursing obtained from the University of Venda, Toyando. Dr. Geti Makado is the recipient of the Nkono Fellowship Doctoral Award, awarded by the South African Women in Science Awards in 2023. She also was recognized as one of the more made Guardian in 200 young South Africans 2024. Dr. Makado's research interests lie in epilepsy education, maternal mortality, and public health interventions. Her work focuses on developing epilepsy life skills education guidelines for primary schools in Limpopo and Mpumalanga, funded by the South African Medical Research Council, SAMRAC, to reduce stigma and promote inclusivity for children with epilepsy. Dr. Geti Makado is an active researcher with 17 peer-reviewed publications, 6 of which are directly linked to her PhD. Her research contributions extend to critical health issues, including HIV, PTSD in rape survivors, and community health interventions. Dr. Geti Makado has also played a vital role in strengthening community partnerships, particularly in supporting parents of children with special needs. Dr. Geti Makado, as we welcome her, she is going to talk about Nelson Mandela's vision of education as liberation. Dr. Geti Makado, you are welcome. You can tell us about this topic. Thank you. It's your turn.
Thank you. Thank you so much. One thing that I love being in academia, okay, I'm the Dr. Geti Makado, and I'm wearing art. Like what the previous presentation was saying, that we are very, gifted when it comes to art.
Yes.
So one thing that I love about being in academia is that you get to hear a lot of your biography when you're still alive, rather than waiting for it to be called obituary. So I'm gonna start. I'm gonna talk about Mandela's vision as education. Mandela's vision of education as liberation. And I'm aware that the previous speaker was talking about the struggles that we went through as South Africa during apartheid, wherein, if you can even recall from, if we can even recall from previous speakers yesterday's when they were talking about Bantu Education, we can actually connect. So I chose to talk about Mandela's vision of education as liberation because, when you are facing challenges in life, they say that if life throws you with lemon, you turn it into a lemonade. So yesterday, one presenter said, before he started, if I can recall, or when he finished, he said, I'm requesting you who are in Canada to do that, as well as we will be doing. Look at the right person who is sitting next to you and look at your left person and tell them, I care about you.
I care about you.
Thank you. So I bring greetings from the country whose democratic journey is deeply tied to the legacy of Nelson Mandela and those whose destiny is inseparable from the African continent and diaspora. So one of the proverbs that is an African proverb says that, I did mention it yesterday, that wisdom is like a baobab tree, which no one individual can embrace it, which is why today we are here, so that we embrace the wisdom together, Africa and her diaspora, because no one of us can carry it alone. So Nelson Mandela actually reminded us that education is the most powerful weapon which we can use to change the world. But the challenge that we have most of these days is that we're still trying to borrow weapons from others. And you know, when you borrow something, you know what happens. Sometimes you don't even return it. So Africentric education is about forging our own tools of liberation, sharpened by the principle of Ubuntu, heritage, and African values. So for him, I mean Nelson Mandela, education was never neutral. It was either an instrument of oppression under apartheid or an instrument of liberation in a free South Africa. So his vision challenges us to make education a tool of decolonization, empowerment, and transformation. So when we finish, just remember me as a queen of proverbs. Because I'm just going to tell you another African proverb which says that a child who is not embraced by the village will bend down that village to feel its warmth. So Nelson Mandela understood well that education must embrace every child, affirm their identity, give them dignity, or else the whole society will suffer. So as we are here today, we see 1994 as a symbol of renewal, because in 1994, it was not only for South Africa that democracy was reborn, but it also marked the end of apartheid years and the rebirth of democracy. And in Nova Scotia, there's a BLAC report called Africentric Education that was grounded in African values and perspectives. So even though we are separated by oceans, these both events sent one message, that Africans, wherever we are, must reclaim their voices in education and in society. So 1994 was the year that South Africans were so happy and realized that democracy was sweet, until they saw the queue of voting day. But the truth is, the patience that they showed when they were queuing, the solidarity reflected the spirit of Ubuntu that we are saying is continuing to guide us. So Mandela's leadership embodied a Ubuntu in it. He showed us that our struggles are not isolated. His solidarity with the African diaspora in the Caribbean, in Canada, even in America, reminds us that our destinies are intertwined. So Ubuntu actually, it crossed beyond borders, because it also means that your freedom is bound to mine, and your dignity also is bound to mine. Here's another proverb. When a spider and web unite, did you know that they can tie up a lion? Alone we are very weak, but together, Africa and her diaspora, we are unbreakable. But let us be honest, though. When Africans unite, when we unite as Africans, we spend a lot of time arguing about who will lead the march. But that is the beauty of Ubuntu, because leadership is never about individual, but it's about the community moving forward together. It's 30 years later now. 3 decades later, the legacy of Mandela still speaks directly to our moment. Because around the world, we know there are movements rising to decolonize the curricula, to challenge the system of racism, and to restore African heritage in teaching and learning. So Africentric education, we can conclude that it's not about looking backward, but it's about equipping a new generation with confidence, identity, as well as wisdom to lead in a global society. Do you know, let's be real, our ancestors were global even before globalization. Why am I saying this? They built pyramids. The pyramids that today even Google Maps cannot explain them. So what am I saying today to us? I'm saying it is time to move from reflection of what happened to us to action. We must turn solidarity into real partnerships between African universities and diaspora institutions. We must build a curriculum that restores also African knowledge system and center African voices. And we must raise new generation of leaders like Mandela. See education as a pathway to justice and dignity. Because another proverb says that if you want to go fast, yes, you can go alone. But if you want to go far, we go together. So this legacy teaches us that the struggle for freedom does not end with political liberation, but it continues. It's supposed to continue in our classroom, in our lecture halls and communities where knowledge is shaped. So as we reflect in 1994, let's look forward with courage and with Ubuntu to a future where Africentric education is not an exception, but a norm. I would say, ngiyabonga, ndolikuwa. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gitmakado. Yeah, that is very interesting. She's saying let's raise a new generation like Nelson Mandela. That is very, very powerful. Now, Dr. Gitmakado, tell me, how does Mandela's vision of education connect with Africentric education today? How can you tell us about that?
If I can go back to what I said at the beginning when I started, I said education is the most powerful weapon. That is what Mandela said, to change the world. So Africentric education sharpens that weapon by making sure that learners see their culture and identity reflected. Otherwise, you know, we will risk raising children who know who Shakespeare is, but don't know who Shaka Zulu is.
Yeah.
So I think it's the continuation of Mandela's dream, education as liberation.
Thank you so much. That is very good. Any question on the chat? Maybe if there's one who has questions or any comment before I go straight to the second panelist. We also have, is there any question? Okay, let me continue to the second panelist, who is Dr. Mnyadziwa Mwimeleli. Dr. Mnyadziwa Mwimeleli is a postdoctoral fellow in public health at the University of Venda. She holds a Bachelor of Nursing Science that she obtained in 2019, Master of Public Health that she obtained in 2022, and a PhD in Public Health in 2025 from the same institution. Her doctoral research developed a trauma-informed curriculum for primary school teachers in Limpopo, South Africa, with 6 peer-reviewed publications and awards. She integrates clinical nursing and academic expertise to advance trauma-informed education and public health in resource-limited settings. Dr. Mnyadziwa Mwimeleli, We are still under the topic of Nelson Mandela, South Africa, and the diaspora, And now she is focusing on the need to put African identity, heritage, and values at the center of education in South Africa. Let's welcome Dr. Mnyadziwa as she's going to talk under the topic that I mentioned. Dr. Mnyadziwa, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, everyone. My name is Dr. Mnyadziwa Mwibiriri, and let me say that I'm a bit nervous after speaking because the Queen of Proverbs was speaking and she said a mouthful. So how do you even continue? I think we can close for the day after that speech. Thank you so much, Dr. Tendo. So I will be continuing with a topic which says that the need to put African identity, heritage, and values at the center of education within our very own country, which is South Africa. So while we speak about that, I'm going to now introduce to you and say a proverb again by Nelson Mandela, which says that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. This for Mandela education was not just about books that we read in general or our exams that we are writing. It was about promoting freedom, dignity, as well as building a future for our very own people of South Africa. Well, we all know that under the apartheid era, education was used as a weapon to oppress the Black people. People were oppressed back in the days. Black children were actually given the Bantu Education system, which Prof. Makado spoke about earlier, which was meant to actually keep them down, to make them doubt themselves and not believe in themselves, as well as to forget their own heritage. That was not good. But Mandela and his generation fought against this because they believed that education should make us all proud and be who we are today. Today, in our democracy, we must continue this fight by ensuring that our African identity, as well as our values, are able to guide us and to guide our schools, as well as the children within those schools. Why does this African identity matter? If a child grows up in a school and never sees their culture, nor history, or their own language in that classroom, they may feel as if their identity does not matter. I believe that we all agree with this. But when African identity is represented through teaching, children actually gain pride as well as self-confidence. They see their background, they see their family, their traditions, as well as their languages. They see this as valuable aspects. They learn that Africa is not just about problems, but is also about wisdom, creativity, and lastly, let me also say leadership. South Africa has a very rich heritage. We have different stories, we have different proverbs that teach morals as well as wisdom. Our indigenous knowledge about farming, we know there's a lot of farming in South Africa, healing, as well as protecting the environment that can make these lessons, we can use them as practical. We have different languages, isiZulu, isiXhosa, Sesotho, Chivenda, and many others that should not only be spoken at home, but should also be used in learning. Mandela once said, if you talk to a man in his language, it goes to his heart. Therefore, when children learn in their own language, they understand better and they also feel respected, which is something that in South Africa we are about to implement right now currently, wherein we want to implement children writing exams or tests in their own language. That way they will be able to better understand. African values for teaching. There are many values that we can bring into the classroom. She spoke about Ubuntu. Prof. Makano spoke about Ubuntu, which is I am because we are, which teaches us caring, sharing, as well as respect. Respect for our elders. Learning from those who are much more older than us, our older generations, we learn wisdom. Community spirit, teaching teamwork, as well as helping each other. For she said, the Queen of Proverbs said that we cannot do things alone. If you want to get far, you do it with others. As well as resilience, showing strength when facing challenges in South Africa. And the last one, I'm going to speak about justice and equality, which is the principles that Mandela fought for. But then how can teachers do this? I think that teachers can do this with we take it one step at a time. Teachers can start small. They can use African proverbs, stories, or songs in lessons. I also spoke about tests and exams. Invite parents or elders within the schools to share knowledge with learners. It can also be used by locals in science, history, as well as literature, encouraging group work that can reflect Ubuntu. Celebrate cultural days within our schools. Like currently right now, this is Heritage Week. We are celebrating heritage in Africa, in South Africa. Although with everything, there are always challenges. Some teachers were trained in Western systems and they may find it very difficult to actually incorporate this. So resources are limited, global pressures that push us to copy other countries. When we are here in South Africa, we want to copy what the Europeans are doing. Like Mandela taught us, it always seems impossible until it is done. If we can work together, we can actually overcome all these challenges and we can have a future that we want. If our education system celebrates African identity and values, then the children, the future generation, will be able to grow up and make us proud. They will be confident and they will be ready to face the world. They will know what she said. They will know Shakespeare, yes, but they will also know Steve Biko, Shalak Mateken, as well as Shaka Zulu. They will learn the global science, but also the wisdom of our own African roots and traditions. In conclusion, let me end by saying this. Education is not neutral. It makes us proud of who we are, or it makes us forget. If we want to honor Mandela's legacy, right now I say that we must make sure that our schools build identity, preserve this beautiful heritage, and pass on African values. Because when a South African child knows who they are, they will also know what they can become. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nyanziwa. I only have one question for you. You spoke much about an African identity. So what practical steps can teachers take immediately to emphasize African heritage and values in their classroom, even without the curriculum before?
Thank you very much, Dr. Basuta. I think to answer that question, teachers, as I said, can start small, but using very powerful weapons or actions.
Yes.
They can use African stories. We have songs that we sing, as well as proverbs, which can explain these lessons. We can bring in our elders, our parents, to share knowledge with the students, with the learners within the classroom. This can help us actually bridge that gap. They can use group work to practice Ubuntu values, as well as teamwork, working together in collaboration. Even the examples teachers use in class, from local heroes to community practices, these examples can make learning feel more African. These things don't need extra money. There is no extra money needed. It's just creativity, as well as respect for our very own African culture. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, you heard about it. You heard Dr. Nyanziwa. I hope everyone understood her. Now we are going to our last panelist, who is Mrs. Shirin Sinegota. Sinegota is a dedicated lecturer in the Department of Psychology at the University of Bantu. She is currently pursuing a doctoral degree in psychology with a master's degree in psychology from the same university. Her extra time was spent on mentoring students and assisting learners as a peer helper. Her expertise extends to the field of marketing research. Her more than 5 years of experience in quantitative research has honored her skills in data analysis and interpretation. Passionate about teaching and learning, Mrs. Chinezi is committed to fostering a stimulating and engaging educational environment for her students. Let's all welcome Mrs. Chinezi Nagota. Mrs. Chinezi Nagota, it's your time to tell us. And she is going to talk about Nelson Mandela embracing diversity and non-racism. Thank you, it's your turn.
Thank you so much, Dr. Masuta, and thank you so much to my fellow colleagues and panelists. They've done such an amazing work and brought a good foundation to my topic and my discussion for the day. So I'll be talking about Nelson Mandela, and embracing diversity and non-racialism, which will be focusing on the race, the culture, and the religion. So Nelson Mandela profoundly influenced and appreciated diversity. And this is why today we have the term called the Rainbow Nation, which was originally not his own term, by the way. He got it from Desmond Tutu, who came up with the term just to appreciate the diversity that he saw in South Africa. So he took that word as a Rainbow Nation just to appreciate the diversity that he saw in terms of the races in South Africa, which is Black, white, colored Indians, and Asians. And that has helped him to go forward with his mission of trying to bring democracy within the races of South Africa and diversity within South Africa. So I'm going to have my discussion in two parts. I'll talk about, firstly, what used to happen during apartheid and which will bring forth why change was necessary, and why Nelson Mandela brought in the change later. So during apartheid, there was a legislation called the Forced Racial Classification. And this Forced Racial Classification Act forced the races to segregate. So basically we would have Black people having to move from where they originally were born and were segregated in different parts of South Africa. So Blacks had to live amongst Blacks, whites amongst whites, and colors amongst colors. And this had a profound impact on families, because those who had multiracial families were forced to separate, and Black mother would stay home, and then a white father would have to move and stay somewhere else. And this is why Nelson Mandela found it impactful on our races, and he thought he needed to do something in terms of that segregation that had impacted families within South Africa. We also had millions of mixed race community, the colored group, who were forced from where they were originally born, and they had to move to a place called District 6 because they were not allowed to stay there. So they were forced to leave where they were originally born and to be moved out to a place, and that was moving them away from their heritage, away from their home, to a land that they were not familiar with, and they had to adapt in those places. There were things like segregation in terms of public spaces, like beaches, like buses, like hospitals, where people couldn't live together, and then they had to be segregated. Language was undermined. Prof spoke a lot on this, so I'm not going to emphasize, but we all know that we couldn't embrace our own languages. So that made us to feel ashamed of using our own language, because English and Afrikaans were the main languages in South Africa. Cultures were also undermined. Yes, you see us, we are wearing our heritage. In those times, if we were wearing our heritage attire, it was seen as primitive and non-professional. So we're not allowed to be wearing like this in a professional setting, because that made you look like you're uneducated or you're primitive, you're not developed. So those cultures were undermined. And this is where Nelson Mandela also spotted where the segregation came from. African religions were also undermined, and they were seen, people who practiced their own Africanism or African heritage were seen as devils or pagans or barbaric. So they were not free to use their own, to practice their own religions, because they would be termed devilish, and they would be forced to adopt the Christian religion. Freedom for, okay, now I'm in the post apartheid. So I want to now move from the current, what happened then to now. So during the democracy of Nelson Mandela, what he did, he saw that he needed to bridge a gap in the segregation. So they brought in a new legislation called the Restoration of Rights Act, which ensured that everyone had rights. So because back in the days, people couldn't use buses, there were places that were segregated for whites and for blacks, they demolished that law and made sure that people didn't have to be segregated by race. And also it demolished the pass law, where people didn't have to carry pass to show that to enter places or to go to different areas. It also ensured that there was land redistribution because of those people who had to be segregated to go in different areas. Now people had access to land, they were able to buy land, and they were not forced into a small space of land, according to the apartheid laws. Our languages were now recognized. So Nelson Mandela ensured that we had 11 official languages, even though Prof. Makado explained this part that we have more than 11 languages in South Africa, but at least 11 of those languages were made official. So at least they were recognized as official languages, as opposed to those two, English and Afrikaans, that were recognized as official languages. So thanks to Nelson Mandela that some languages were now recognized as official languages. Nelson Mandela didn't only celebrate heritage, but he was also a man who dressed in his heritage attire. So he made it a norm that he wore his famous Mandela shirts in parliament. So he would usually be seen in parliament wearing his famous Nelson Mandela shirts. I think some of you have seen it in his pictures when they were printed in some African prints, and that's what he would wear most of the time. And that gave us an identity as African people. It made us realize that we can actually embrace our heritage. It is not actually primitive. It's something that you can even wear in a professional space. And this is why even today we celebrate Heritage Day. And we can sit in a professional space like we're doing now, wearing our heritage attire. And we can embrace it and feel good about ourselves, which is also good for the upcoming generation to realize their heritage and embrace it. Nelson Mandela also restored indigenous place names. So we had streets called Van Wyk. So many streets were named after Afrikaner heroes, if you can put it that way. They were heroes in that time. But then we have restored our indigenous names, place names, to our African names. So in conclusion, South Africa has made historic progress by tearing down the oppressive laws of apartheid and celebrating diversity in race and culture and religion of the Rainbow Nation. The current focus is crucial and long-term of overcoming the fragmented but persistent social economic consequences that have been left behind due to the era. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You, Students Nekota, you have said a mouthful. Now, as you indicated, that Nelson Mandela addressed all the racial inequities in South Africa. To what extent did that vision of Nelson Mandela address that racial inequity? Because you were talking about the race, you were talking about the religion. So to what extent that vision addressed that inequities?
So yes, Nelson Mandela has addressed a lot of the racial inequities in South Africa. He has addressed the political inequalities where people didn't have opportunities in terms of going to parliament, in terms of voting. They didn't have a say in terms of political agendas that were happening in the country. He also made strides in terms of the social inequalities of race, where blacks were not supposed to enter these places, go to these areas, climb these buses. But where we were not able to actually reach, where I would say we still have a big gap, is in terms of the economic inequalities. Because as Prof. Makado indicated, that the wealth of South Africa still lies in the white minority, while the Black majority are still suffering economically. So we have a lot of poverty within the Black race, while the white minority are the richest and they own the economy of South Africa.
Thank you so much. Now, I think we have come to the end of our panel discussion. I don't know if we have any question from that side, from artifacts or from the chat, but now, as I can conclude, it's just to say thank you so much, panelists, and you have this is an eye opener, because today we were not supposed, if we were still in that apartheid era, we were not supposed to wear what we are wearing today and sitting like this in this sitting arrangement. It was going to be very difficult, and it was going to be difficult also to be in this symposium collaborating with the Canadian people. Thank you so much, the program director. I think we have come to the end of our discussion, and thank you for your time, all the participants, or all the people who are online and those who are physically there. We thank you and we envy you. We are there. We are going to be there in 2026.
Yes.
In May, we will join you in physical. But thank you for this time that you granted to us. Wait.
In terms of the schedule change. So before we go into the discussion that we're going to have in terms of community learning, I mentioned to you folks earlier about the questions, reflection questions that are on your chairs for the gallery walk. So I think we'll combine just a bit of a stretch and the chance to kind of do that. So I would invite folks to, within, say, 7 minutes in the stroll, just to do that down the hall, and you talk amongst yourselves or just think about it. And then when we come back, we'll be settled in for the continuation of application. I think that's what we've heard a fair amount now. And so, yeah, so then we'll do that walk kind of around in there, and then just come right back into your seats in here as your comfort level. And like I said, we'll just be 5 to 7 minutes to have that experience to learn. Okay, any clarification questions before? All right, thank you so much. And then we'll come back in here and we'll set up in between.
right now. Mommy, don't never worry. Fake love, no they impress. I got vision. Burn them, free them, they never listen. We took a million and flip the precision, yeah. Give me something where I know if you see anywhere. They wanna try, but I know if you see me for there. You're messing with a lion. Big shot bigger than a titan. I need 100% not divided. They wanna know what's the reason for the violence. I get paid late long time, the money energized. And every time I'm shining, one of a kind. I know most days then they try take me down, but they move too slow, but man know they're around. Hello Jekuri Yikbe, hello Jekuri Yikbe, hello Jekuri Yikbe, Jekuri Yikbe, hello Jekuri Yikbe. Man, we getting it, baby. Man, we getting it, baby. Man, we getting it, baby. Getting it, baby. Man, we getting it, baby. Stacky paper, yeah, bad man, she love me no raper. Stacky cash by the pound, we away cash. Carry the Glock round the town with a laser. Navigator to the money blaze gun. Get a youth with a lot of determination. I feel me song and me I keep. Nah, I know the follow you again. Follow you again. Man, I know the focus, 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 focus on paper. Baby, see you later. By the paper enter, I go call you, short for you. Balenciaga, request. Leave it and go be less, baby, my bed. Wait, look, see me, give me, ego, ego. Money talking, now they working for money. Kilo, you don't sour. Holy water. Who I can make you updates? Shakaboolies. Kilo, to the wine easy. Me money easy. Life is give money easy. Kilo, expensive girl. Tell the baby want it like costly. I will let you know for a birthday. Costest, fastest. Hey, want it like coste. For me, for you. My baby want it like coste. Expensive girl. Costest. Take your money fastest. I like you. Dollars in my bank account. BTC for my yeah. Kill shell gone. Make your money gone. My pain gone. We dey share money on the day. We dey spend money on the day. On the daily. Focus on paper. Baby, see you later. By the paper enter, I go call you, short for you. Balenciaga, request. Leave it and go be less, baby, my bed. Wait, look, see me, give me, ego. Money talking, now they working for money. Kilo, you don't sour. Holy water. Who I can make you updates? Shakaboolies. Kilo, to the wine easy. Give money easy. Life is give money easy. Kilo, expensive girl. Tell the baby want it like costly. I will let you know for a birthday. Costest, fastest. Hey, want it like coste. For me, for you. My baby want it like coste. Expensive girl. Costest, fastest. Kilo.
All right, everyone, we will just resume. If you can make your way back to your seats, and so we can keep this ball rolling. All right, All right, we're going to be a bit time conscious today, and in keeping time as closely as possible, we want to try to finish earlier than expected, so you can go do your yard sailing or whatever it is you do on Saturday. But there's a funeral happening on the other side, and we want to pay our respects and ensure that we keep on time so that for those who want to participate there can also attend. All right, so I don't know why I'm in the middle of this powerhouse, but I'm here. And I want to do a quick intro. I want to read a quick introduction for the two panelists here, and they will literally have a discussion on issues that are related to both international and local understanding of Afrocentricity. There will be personal connection and future thoughts and all of that. So I'll encourage you to save your questions to the end as well. So we'll have an extra 5 minutes or so for you to ask questions. Yesterday, if you were here, we were honored to hear Dr. Brigham read Dr. Asante's bio. So I will give an even briefer version of his bio. We're honored to be in the presence of Dr. Asante, a pioneer scholar and one of the leading voices in Afrocentric thought. Dr. Asante has authored numerous books and articles that have shaped the global discourse on Afrocentricity, education, and cultural identity. His work continues to inspire communities worldwide to center African values, perspectives, and experiences in knowledge creation, and social transformation. And Delphina, she's over there, alongside. I want to welcome Delphina as well. She is a dedicated community advocate. And as I think of the connection, listening to the story that I heard from Delphina and Dr. Asante, I'm just reflecting on the For the Moment, which I actually listened to them sing, and it reminded me, for those who in South Africa, I attended a cultural event, and there was a group of folks singing in black. I think they're called Voices of Angels or something like that. Yeah, they had the Voices of Angels. So those in South Africa, just picture that, Delphina and her group called For the Moment. She has over her roots and heritage is steeped in the African Nova Scotian community with over 400 years of history here. Her work connects history with current practice, ensuring Afrocentric values stay relevant and meaningful to future generations. So thank you to both participants here today. And so I'll just begin by asking you, Dr. Asante, to just speak on a personal connection. What was your first visit to Nova Scotia like, and what made you want to stay connected with us?
Well, thank you very much. I hope you can you hear me? All right, okay. Thank you. Hotep, again, we give all praises to the indigenous people, and we give thanks for this land. Actually, this is a very incredible story for me. I was born in the state of Georgia, in the south of the United States. And I grew up very much a peasant. I am from a peasant family. You know, sometimes people like to say they're from royal families and prison families. I grew up a peasant. My parents had 16 children. I am number 4. I'm the oldest son. And our history in the south of the United States goes back, at least in that country, to actually, I'm the 6th generation. So I've been in the United States much longer than the Trump family, which is only 2 generations, right? So I know that place, right? So I grew up and I migrated as a young person out of Georgia to Tennessee. I went to Tennessee. I finished high school, marched with Diane Nash, whose name you don't know, but who was one of the great student leaders in the 1960s at Fisk University. And then actually ultimately graduating from UCLA in the field of communication, not in African studies, but in communication. And during this period, I began to gain my consciousness. And my consciousness means that I began to question everything. And the questioning of everything included the question of identity, the question of place, location, history, religion, ethics, morality, all of these things. And in search of identity, I went to Africa for the first time in my memory in 1972. And I went to Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Kenya. And when I came back, I was a changed person. But when I got to Ghana, one of the things that happened to me in Ghana was that the king at that time of the Asantes, the Asantehene, asked me what my name was. And I told him at that time. And he said, well, that's not an African name. Where you get a name like that from? And it was very shocking to me because I had written a small book at that time called The Rhetoric of Black Revolution. They had that book in the university at the University of Ghana. And the man said, I thought the writer was an Englishman. This is what the librarian told me. I said, oh no, this should never happen. This will never happen again. That is, I have got to find an African name. So the Ghanaian king, Asantehene, gave me the name Kete Asante. But he said, what day were you born on? I said, I was born on Friday. He said, then you're Kofi. Kofi Kete Asante. On my own, I chose the name Molefe to relate to the struggle in South Africa. And this is why I'm saying this for also the South Africans who are listening on live stream, that I wanted to show solidarity in the 70s. This is in the 70s with the South African struggle. So instead of using Kofi, I used the name Molefe, which in the US they say Molefe, Molefe Kete Asante, all right? So that was the name. However, a few years later, I did a DNA test, and the DNA test said, you know, your ancestors are not Ghanaians. so I have a Ghanaian name, but my paternal ancestry supposedly is Yoruba, and my maternal ancestry is Mahasi from Sudan. So there are two versions of the Molefe Asante, right? So now when I get in the 1990s, I happened to meet a gentleman who is sitting here, is right over here, named Harvey, right? Dr. Harvey. I happened to meet him in Toronto. We met in Toronto at an interesting conference, and the conference was on slavery in Africa. And of course, there was a person who was actually from Mauritania, who was a representative of the government. I don't know whether you remember him, Harvey, but you're right. And we had a big debate with him because what he was representing the government, and Mauritania at that time still had enslaved people in Mauritania. And we criticized him for representing the government and trying to hide the fact that in Mauritania there were enslaved people, that the Arabs were enslaving Africans. That was the situation in Mauritania. It had also been the situation in Sudan. So we knew that situation. We studied, Harvey and I knew that situation. So we questioned him. So we became very, very good friends, and we connected. And then at a subsequent time, I think I came to Nova Scotia, or either for the moment came to Philadelphia. You can, I'm sure that Delphina can clarify this story. You know, as an elder, my memory is not quite as sharp as it used to be. But either She came, the For the Moment group came to Philadelphia, or either I came to Nova Scotia first in the 1990s, 1992, came in 1993, as the emergence here of the Afrocentric movement that was actually being led at that time by Delvina. So I came here and they had me to speak. I spoke, I gave presentations, and then we had a symbiotic relationship between Nova Scotia and Philadelphia. And it was interesting to me because I never knew that there were so many, well, let's put it this way. I never knew there were black people in Nova Scotia, to be honest with you. It was never my understanding. Number one, I thought it was too cold. Number two, how do black people live up here? I mean, this was very shocking to me. But when I came up here, I found not only did I feel wonderful up here, I felt warmth. I felt the same spirit. And then that's, I guess, when I heard the For the Moment. And the singing was so much like the singing that I knew from my home in Georgia and in Tennessee and in North Carolina. And I said, wow, these are the same people. They have the same spirit. So that's just an origin story. I'll later talk a little bit about the diaspora, but that's basically my origin story. And I love, and I used to say that this Nova Scotia was my second home. I like the spirit here. I love the people, and I related very much to them. And I came maybe 4 or 5 times. I came back to Nova Scotia to the Symposium and to the conferences that they had with the black educators. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. I'm going to get Delvina to pick up from some of what you said, but also to talk about what impressions did you get from his visit?
Well, here's the thing. This is perfect because I think those of us who are educators, we love show and tell. So I put together, when Sylvia, approached me about doing this and the conversation, the topic, I said, can I get a little display table? I said, because I want to bring all my little personal archives to tell the story, the journey. And Dr. Asante's, you just said, sometimes our memory, same here. So I was like, not trusting my memory. I went in my tickle trunk of Afrocentric case, ALI, African Canadian Education Project initiatives, and I came up with these things. So as to bring everybody here into the same conversation and place where we are for that long relationship that we've had. So here's my show and tell. I went in my box. First thing I found was this: Afrocentricity, Education, and Positive Self-Image, featuring Dr. Malafi Asante, presented by the African Canadian Education Project, February 22nd, 1993, at the North Branch Library. Well, that's an archive. That's when it all started. Not to mention, I used to go to Toronto a lot, and I lived there, and there's a black man there who owned the Third Rail bookstore, Mr. Johnson, and he never let me buy my own books. I'd go in, and I'd be talking to him. He'd just go around the shelves and pick out the books, sit them on the counter, and say, this is what you're buying today. And he put a number of Dr. Asante's books. So that's how I got onto Dr. Asante's work. And I would read these books, and as Dr. Asante said, For the Moment was in Toronto. We had to go for an interview at Much Music. So I said, Harvey, I saw a poster on a lamppost or something or somewhere with Dr. Asante's name. You got to go down there because we have to go to this and find him. And he did. And so from that conversation, it went forward, and we were able to bring him here. I remember talking to Gilbert Day, who was working for multiculturalism and citizenship at the time, and he walked me through how we could get some funds to bring him here. And we got some sponsorship from Dalhousie, and the library, of course, has always been there for us. And this was to happen. Well, it was February. Did you see that? Snowstorm. That's right. Didn't happen. But Dr. Asante, And we talked, put us back in his schedule, and I talked to my trusty friend at a last minute, Robert Upshaw, leader of the, at the time, operational leader and director of the Black Learner Advisory Committee. I said, Robert, here's our situation. He said, and here's where we can book him back in. Robert said, no worry, we'll put him on the agenda. He said, no, we won't just put him on the agenda, we'll put him in the plenary so that all 300 people coming can hear him. And I remember that day, and I remember you saying to all the parents, when your child goes to school and they tell him, Columbus discovered America, and you said, tell them to write in the margins. That is not true. Don't let them go to school and try to do the battle by themselves and get in trouble. You tell them, write things in the margin, bring the margin home to the parents, then you go to the school and do battle. I'll never forget that comment. And I bet I see some nodding heads here, like Karen's nodding, I see Bernadette's nodding. And so here is the report done by Doug Sparks, Black Learner Advisory Education Report. And we've got you, see, we're preserving history. We've got you here on page 1, where it says, special speakers, it says Dr. Vince Dole, keynote speaker, because that was already planned. And then we had to get you in there, thanks to Robert and his team. And then it says Dr. Molefi Asante, special guest speaker. So that was the first of your coming to hang out with us. And then, I just got a couple more. I happened to go through my notes and I found my box and I found your presentation, preparation by Dr. Molefi Kete Asante, Saturday, March 20th, 1999, Citadel Hotel, Halifax. You gave an address to us. That's when we got you back again. That was another fantastic one. Now, in between some of those things, you said you invited, I'd given you, sneakily, a For the Moment CD when he came as part of his gift.
That's right.
He heard the CD.
That's right.
And then he called me, and you called me, and you said, "Oh my gracious, I have to bring you guys to my conference in October, the Shake and to Job conference." So that same year in ¡93, we went there. It was a wonderful conference, and I do remember a woman saying to me, Nova Scotia? Black people in Nova, she said, only person, I don't know nothing about Nova Scotia except for that woman who sang the song about the snowbird named Anne Murray. And then she said, so what's it like up there for black people? I said, it's kind of like down here. Kind of like down here, except that we got health care and no guns. That was it. And so that was the difference of the conversation. So then I found, and then so there was that.
So Delphina, if I can interject just in time, I want you to also, if you can just talk about Afrocentricity. How does that play into the Nova
Don't worry,
Scotia
it's going to
picture?
come. It's going to come, because here's the last thing. So look, we've got you here again, July 13th, 2007, for the opening of the Africentric Leadership Management Institute in North Preston, Nova Scotia.
That's right.
Home of the black community in the Preston Township.
Right.
We got you again. And then, I think I have you here coming with us one more time. I mean, in between there, you had an invitation from King's University, and I see Dr. Bill Leahy here.
Right.
And you came, and there was that was a collaboration with King's African Services Division, when Robert was now over there as the executive director. Right. And there were things in between there as well. But I know in between there, when we had the cohorts, the very important, it's not on the panel for this coming panel, but the Master's Afrocentric cohort was phenomenally significant in opening the door for the other panels. I'm looking at Sue right here. Sue Brigham, who's at Mount St. Vincent University, was a key person in that, because she taught there, had just come from Alberta, forged amazing relationships with people that has given us so many people today who did that master's, and some of them who've gone on to get their PhD, like Dr. Kesa, who Sue supervised, Martin Morrison, who's also now a professor, who Sue supervised, and I do believe you still have Sylvia in the wings, do you? And Regine Will, that's right. So forging that wonderful relationship because of that cohort. And Dr. Asante was a part of that, so I see in between he did that. And then I have him here on one page, he came again, and that would have been between May 3rd and 5th, 2012. that he came for the official launch of the Africentric Learning Institute at the World Trade and Convention Center in Halifax. So I just bring these things to say, our relationship with you as African Nova Scotians has a long thread, a long history. And I'll just say this, Randy, that,
Go for it.
yeah, I'm gonna go for it. What I would say is that, and I wrote this down because I didn't want to get it wrong. You have been an unshakable mentor, a towering architect of Afrocentric philosophy, and a transformational political force for us African Nova Scotians. And you have given us so much. And the most important thing is that you have helped us to redefine our relationship to the Nova Scotian education system. So what are your reflections on that? What are your reflections on how you sort of spoke about that? And that's been the journey that we have been on with you, and it's such a blessed journey. And when you talk about your background, and I know, and I've been to Tennessee, and I've been to Georgia, and I know those places, and absolutely, I can see, I feel right at home when I'm down there, you know?
Where
Seriously.
you are.
Yeah, I feel like, I'm in the Derby. I feel like...
So if I get to Dr. Asante, if I can get you to, thank you, Delphina, that was deep. So let's look into the future of Afrocentricity here. What do you envision for the future of Afrocentricity in Nova Scotia? And Delphina, you can pick up on that after he has contributed on that.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Delphina, because, it's always good when younger people are able to give you, as she has done, this information that you've forgotten, and I appreciate it very much. Bring that to my attention. Let me put it this way. I am just truly amazed that we have come as far as we have come, and yet we still have a long ways to go. When we first started this task about Afrocentric education, the concern was then as it is now, and that is, how do we bring children, particularly of African descent, into a position where they no longer feel that they're on the margins of history, or where they're on the periphery of culture or philosophy? How do you bring them into a situation where they see their own agency, where they are agents themselves? They're not spectators to Europe. They are themselves agents of history and of change, and African people have always done things. In fact, the first people to do things were Africans. There were no people anywhere else in the world for at least 230,000 years of the 300 or more years that Homo sapiens have been on the earth. For at least 230,000 of those years, there were only people in Africa. There were no Homo sapiens anywhere else. So obviously, that's a period of time that has to be accounted for, at least in the development of humanity. And it is normally never taught to Black children. They have no idea, as I said yesterday, that Imhotep, the first multidimensional human that we know anything about, was a Black man. We don't know that. Just our children don't grow up knowing that. White children don't grow up knowing that. And we grow up and we will know Homer, who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, but Homer lived 800 years before the Christian era. 800 years before the Christian era. When Imhotep lived almost 2,000 years before Homer. So part of this, the future of Afrocentricity, is to get the whole world and all people to realize the centrality of the African experience for all humanity. And we have not yet got there. That is what we are working on. And that's why it was important to hear Dr. Machado talk about the indigenous learning programs in South Africa. That's key. But what I have always said, even in South Africa, I want the South Africans and the Kenyans and Nigerians and Zambians and Zimbabweans to connect the contemporary indigenous knowledge systems with the ancient classical African systems of Kemet and Nubia and Ethiopia. Because that's the connection that has been broken. And that's the connection that right here in Nova Scotia that we want our children to know and to have and to understand, because it's fundamental. There's no reason except that we just have not, sometimes it's lack of knowledge, but sometimes it's mean-spirited. But I think in most cases, people just, as teachers, we teach what we know. And if you don't know things, you can't teach them. So we've got to teach people more. And I think that time is coming.
Dr. Asante, Randy asked me to pick up from what you're saying. And what's coming to my mind is that over the years of this relationship that we treasure so much, you've taught us so much. One of the terms that you have often said, and you've often written about, that sticks in my mind is the term, and I use it a lot, psychological dislocation. And when I think about that, it's one of the many things about the legacies of colonialism and enslavement that has happened to us that you've taught us about. And so, and how it relates to the day, you talk about our learners, our day-to-day relationships for our Black learners from cradle to grave. It can be adult learners, it can be young people, whatever. So this notion of psychological dislocation and how it impacts us is, my question is, what are the kinds of psychic effects that emerge among us as African descended peoples, as Black people, because of this psychological dislocation? And how do they manifest in our behavior? How do they manifest in our community politics? How does it manifest in terms of our cultural production, what we choose to put our time into, if we have Eurocentric views? And how does the colonial state structure in terms of educational curricula, government protocols, and all these kinds of things, and sometimes forcing us to value Eurocentric norms, how do they reinforce this dislocation? How do they do that? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's the crux to going forward, because I know we want to talk about how do we go forward, but before we can go forward, I want you to elaborate on what we have to get out of the way, that big elephant in our brain.
Yeah, that's very good. That's a 4-hour seminar, but
that means we have to, Sylvia, we're bringing it back.
We're gonna, yeah. But let me start at the beginning, if I can. For the last 400 to 500 years, one of the problems that we have most of those of us who have been colonized or enslaved in the Western world is that we have been moved off of our own terms. We don't live on our own terms. We live on the terms of those who oppressed us. And we think out of the box that they have given us. And this is in everything. I mean, almost you can just name it. What's the concept of beauty? What's the concept of ethics, of values? What's the family? Is a family, a nuclear family? I mean, all these things that we have in our heads, because they have been imposed upon us by those who have said, this is the way you should look at the world. So that produces psychological dislocation. It produces problems of self-hatred, problems that create conflict between us even. We don't trust each other as we should sometimes, because we claim in our own heads that there are people acting in certain ways that are not acting out of their own African agency. These are problems that have been produced by the whole process of disorienting African people. And the aim of all forms of domination, whether it's, even if it's patriarchy, it's the same. A hierarchy, it's the same. The aim of domination is control. How do you control people? How do you actually break down a situation where if people are supposed to, you think by virtue of identity, like each other, they don't like each other? You know what I mean? How do you create that problem? How do you create that? You have to develop a system for that. And throughout history, and throughout our history as African people for the last, as I say, 400, 500 years, that's the problem we have. We're doing a book now that comes out of Bloomsbury early in 26, which is called Africology and the African Diaspora. And I've been very, very fascinated by the similarities between the issues in Nova Scotia, the issues among Africans in Mexico. Are there Africans in Mexico? Of course. Yes. Yeah, because people don't know that. That's another issue that you have to learn. Colombia, yes. Brazil, the same issue. Same issues. They're discussing right now in Brazil the same issues we're discussing right here in Nova Scotia. And the interactions between Africans, whether they have Angolan or Nigerian ancestry in Brazil, these are the same issues. Whether they have color descriptions and changes and ideas of colorism, well, these things, they're the heart of the dislocation, the psychological dislocation, where we no longer see ourselves, you see, as centered in our own historical narrative. So my belief is that we can go forward in Nova Scotia, but one of the big problems we have to heal this whole rift that we sometimes have. I mean, take for example, I just want to give me one more minute. Here in Nova Scotia, I almost see, I guess one of the feelings I have about Nova Scotia is, and this is a confession, is a feeling I have about the United States. Here's that feeling. They're certainly not the same, particularly now, okay, right? But here's the feeling about the community, the Black communities in both places. The African American community, and we say this, we say in the United States, we made it possible in the United States for people from Latin America, for people from Asia, people from all over all over the world to come to the United States and go to the University of Georgia. Think about this. Before Africans African Americans fought and demonstrated and moved the United States to the point where when I grew up, I could not, why did I go to the University of California? I couldn't go to the University of Georgia. It was segregated. It was not possible. I grew up in Georgia, but I went to the University of California, Los Angeles, because Georgia was a segregated state. But when we broke open the University of Georgia, what happened? We got people from India, for the first time, coming to the University of Georgia. Indians couldn't go to the University of Georgia. Chinese couldn't go to the University of Georgia. Other Africans from outside the United States couldn't go to the University of Georgia until African Americans made it possible. That's why I come here and I always think of the nobility of the African Nova Scotians who were here from the beginning. You made it possible for us. You see? That's the base of it. And you have to understand that. If you come here as an African person or a Caribbean person, you got to honor the nobility of the people who went through the snow and the storms in shelters that hardly kept them warm in the winter. This is the heart of the matter. And it has to always be if you don't understand that, you don't understand how this history is. People come and they say, you know, look at these, I'm just talking. Can I talk a little bit about, I know we're not supposed to talk about the African United States, but let me just talk about it. People come and say, look at the African Americans, they out there on the street, you got some homeless people out there. These people don't even understand where they are and how you have no understanding of the history of that person on the street. No. You don't know nothing. Because if you did, you would have an appreciation for the fact that even those of us who make it have made it against all odds. It's an incredible, that's the story of the American situation, you see? I mean, it is not, we have, out of that experience, an incredible, heroic story. And those are the narratives that ought to be told over and over to the children in Nova Scotia. I mean, I used to tell Delvina when I would hear For the Moment, there would be songs that would make me cry because I would feel the depth of them. And I'll tell you what, I mean, some of you, and you need, to me, I don't know what y'all do here in Nova Scotia anymore, but y'all should show over and over again the film. We should have the film of Africville. I saw that film. I felt that film. How many people know about Africville? A few. Okay. Are you sure?
You should ask how many people don't
I don't
know.
I was going to say, because it's the heart of Nova Scotia. It is. Yeah. And when you understand that, you have an understanding of all the dimensions of what has happened to African people in this continent.
All right, thanks. I'm going to take a chance on Delvina and ask her to do the last question.
Okay.
In 1 minute.
1 minute.
How do we ensure Afrocentricity remains alive and evolving in Nova Scotia? 1 minute.
1 minute. Well, here's the best use of this time. Here's the best use of this time because it's all connected. Because Dr. Sante talked about healing. That is so important. And he also talked about how we have made so much possible for everybody else. And so for us to continue that work, we have to be one family. And this workshop is called Our Family, that's right. Our Collective. Yeah. So I'm going to mention an elephant in the room. In 2012, there was a divide that happened, okay, related to the politics of recognition. And that, in many ways, kind of spread our energy, and in some ways became a flashpoint for a little bit of internal fragmentation. And I have to speak it because I know that coming up in April, there's going to be another conference, and I think not this one, but let's get it on the agenda, because we have to. I feel love for everybody in this room, and I feel love back to me from every person in this room. I do. And, you know, there was this fragmentation, but we as a people, we go through our stuff and we fix it. We do. That's just us. But when that happened, we didn't see the train coming down the track, that the government intervened in a way, let me say this, is that we were having a family feud about a family issue. Our business, host business, not their business. But it was not the Black community that took a direct action to cause, for instance, the neutering of case and the loss of our power and autonomy as a community, but the government did. They took advantage of us having a family conversation, a family feud about family business. Now, we would have worked it all out and gone back to our business. And we have personally. We go to the same churches, we go to the same banquets, we go to this, that, and the third. But there has left a bad feeling there because of this internal fragmentation. And we have never sat down to address it, to heal, because we owe it to our children to heal this divide. I'm sitting here today and then listened to, and I was so glad to hear Melinda tell about Mr. Delmore Buddy Day, because we all loved him, and I learned so much more about the passion for why people supported, you know, that recognition politics the way they did. And it's deserving, of course, but we have never had a chance to have the conversation, and we need to have it. So I'll just say we need to have that conversation, and that we will heal, and the Black community will come through that. And so I think the upcoming conference in April will be an ideal opportunity for us to sit down, you know, the people who are involved in the Black Learner Advisory Committee, the people who are involved in the various boards of CASE. And let me just say this last thing. When I served at CASE for all those years, and because the government intervened and did what they did to our community, it was a very unceremonial ending. I never got a chance to publicly ever say, thank you, Brad Barton, for being the chair leading me. Thank you, Charles Shepard. Thank you, Tracy Jones. Thank you, Sheila Lucas Cole, the most dedicated finance person I've ever seen in my life. She taught me how to be a board member, because taught me how to be a board member on organizations that I'm on. And so when I tell people I'm gonna show up and be there for that, I do it, because if you don't, you would frustrate the person trying to do their job. So I'm on the board of African Nova Scotia Music Association. I make sure to be so dedicated, because I know what the difference that means when you have a dedicated board member. So I learned so much among, as Melinda called them, the heavyweights. The heavyweights. I mean, Mr. Day knew what he was doing when he put all those clergymen, those spiritual leaders, like the late Reverend Dr. Skier, the late Reverend Dr. Clayton, and also Reverend Ohanika, because he knows that one of the strongest kernels in our community has been the spiritual leadership and that network of African United Baptist Association churches. And perhaps we need to engage them in that conversation in April around healing, because we have to heal. We will have our own, and it's so ironic that we have here this partnership with South Africa. They wrote the book on truth and reconciliation. And if whole nations, if de Klerk and Mandela can sit down, who are we? We are the lowest amongst them. And if whole nations can heal, we can do it. We can sit down in April. I extend this to everybody. I love everybody, and we will do it. We will do that.
All right, thank you so much, and I want to honor the time, although we've gone over, and just another round of applause for the two members in this conversation. So thank you.
I need my items back that were circulating, my archives. No stealing of the archives, please.
Hey, they're your sisters and brothers.
I need them for April when we have a display table. Thank you. That's right. That's right. So thank you for inviting me, Sylvia, for being on this panel. Thank you, Randy.
Sylvia, thank you
Wonderful.
very much.
Thank you very much. And great job all the way around. You deserve applause.
While we're transitioning, again, appreciation to this panel. It was fabulous as we anticipated, or this community discussion. So there's a few things I want to say because right now I'm doing the closing, and then we still have a very important session that is coming up. You see on your agendas where we're going to hear about the application, right? So we kind of say to ourselves, so what, with some of these things we've heard about. So now we have a sense of the foundation. We've had leadership talking about from the context of research. We've heard the story. So the flow of the program was intentional, and I hope you're feeling that. And so what we're feeling into now is the opportunity to be able to come together and hear from folks who have been working on structures in terms of change. But that's not my part. Someone else is going to do that in terms of moderating. So I want to say, first of all, thank you to all who have been here in person and online over these 2 days. Please do what we do here now. There's other cultural ways of doing it. Let's acknowledge with gratitude with that. So applause and or you're our grassroots piece for sure. I also want to acknowledge the planning committee. So the planning committee also was mindful about voices. So it was comprised of folks in South Africa and comprised of folks here for the planning committee. So we could acknowledge the planning committee and the DBDLI staff team who were on site here helping to make things flow. We've heard, you've enjoyed wonderful meals. Thanks for the leadership. We have a distributed leadership model here. We think about the importance of Ubuntu, so collaboration, but sometimes some hands need to hold things up, so I want to acknowledge Kayan Scott and Adeswa. Kayan and Adeswa were leading in terms of the catering, organizing, the display of foods. We also had tech, so we had leading that in terms of tech and social media. I'll just go with first names, and then you can look on the website and see who all. So for Ryan and for Lily and for Trevor, in terms of kind of leading with that piece. Some other logistics related to involved with that was John and Ramona. So we had those things happening. We also had, like I said, in terms of the program, you've seen folks there from the team who have been leading that, and M4 Media has been amazing. In helping us make sure things go smoothly. I also want to thank our sponsors, our key sponsor in terms of funding, African Canadian Services Branch through the Department of Education, Early Childhood Development. We also had sponsorship from King's College, and we had sponsorship from Mount St. Vincent University. I want to remind us to do the evaluation, please. It's so important. And actually, you got a space for comments. So I'm expecting to hear something like, well, DBDI should get on top of this. And we should have other organizations who are engaged in things. We should support the research approach that is being led from folks that we heard around table. So look into your program and prompt yourself an ideas of that. But it's really important that we hear from you. And we've been talking all along about calls to action. So this is your chance as well in that evaluation and other ways to put in calls to action. I've got a bunch of things noted. I don't have time to tell you, but we will be sharing those out. I also want to say appreciation to the DBDLI board. So we're, again, a collaborative team, staff and board team. You've seen some of those folks here in terms of being on the program. Again, if you go to dbdli.ca, You'll see our current board makeup and our staff team there and learn all kinds of other things about us. So yeah, so in closing, I am trying to look here because sometimes you miss the most obvious thing. Like when I got married, I forgot to say something nice to my husband. So I don't want to do that here. So people can check me if I miss something and I can slip back up after. But really, I haven't named everyone in terms of who's the staff and who's the board, but please know all hands on deck. We're on deck to make this, which we hope you'll say as well, successful. And more importantly, impactful. So thank you so much. And Michelle, I will hand it over to you.
Hello, hello. If I can get my panel members to come on up, please. Is this on?
It'll probably also be on this one.
All right, just due to time, we're going to get ourselves started and underway. So we have a panel of experts up here. We're just going to have a little conversation here about lessons from the Black community. So as you were all well aware, most of this work is because of the work that was done from the BLAC Report. So these are from recommendations from the beginning. So today we're going to be talking to Dr. Kaysen Monroe Anderson, Jacqueline Harrod, and Karen Hudson, and as well Christian de McBride. So let's start with Jackie. So Jackie is going to be talking about culture and academic enrichment programs that, if you're well aware of BEA, one of the services that they provide to our community across the province. So Jackie has been an educator for 30 years, specialized in elementary and junior high education and French language, and was born here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Jacqueline was given up for adoption at 2 months old by her birth mother and ordered into the care of the Children's Aid Society of Nova Scotia, where she spent the next 20 years placed in the care of foster parents. Jacqueline grew up in rural Nova Scotia, living with foster parents as a sole Black sole person in the region where she resided. She spent 18 years, which is 365 days of the year, and just over 6,570 days until she enrolled in college as the sole person of her race, and has spoken widely about her early existence, of which she defines as being in a state of Black solitary confinement, enduring acts of racial hatred throughout the entirety of those years. She has been emancipated from Nova Scotia's children's welfare system at the age of 18, where she fought for an extension of her wardship to pursue higher education, and at 21 left Nova Scotia foster care system, Once emancipated from foster care, Jackie was able to trace her roots to the historic community of Africville, one of Nova Scotia's 50-plus historic Black communities. Jackie enrolled herself into Nova Scotia Teachers College, and at that time, it was the only institution that was specialized in teacher training here in Canada. She went on to the Mount St. Vincent University, earning herself a Bachelor of Education and a Master's of Education with the focus in classical languages. So Jackie began her public education teaching and administrative career in 1994 with the Halifax Regional School Board at the junior high level. Shortly afterwards, spent a number of years teaching upper elementary, which is grade 4, and the grade 6ers, enrolled in the District Leadership Development Program, and began her years in administration as an elementary vice principal and moved on to lead a primary to 9 school. Soon after, she led the BLAC Educators Association, and during her 20-year tenure with the association, has assumed numerous roles, leading her to her current role of 10 years plus as the Director of Programs, Projects, Operations, and Services. So today, Jackie, tell us a little bit about BEA. So some of us might not know about BEA, but also give us some information regarding the Cultural Academic Enrichment Program. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everyone. I feel that Black children worldwide at the elementary level are in peril and in an education system in crisis, and they require our immediate focus, attention, and resources. And few people are really paying attention, but I feel that the Black Educators Association is. Going the right way? Which way do I point this to move that? To the next slide. Oh, thank you. Regional Educators Program. Whoops, I went backwards. I'm a hands-on learner and I didn't get to practice with this beforehand, so give me a second here. Regional Educators Program manages 2 major functions, or they have 2 major functions. They have about a zillion functions, but 2 of them are managing education committees and our cultural and academic enrichment programs. Regional educator staff, the regional educators and the administrative assistant who serves with us are here today, and would you please just stand so I can recognize you, because this is the regional educators unit who work with me and manage the cultural academic enrichment programs. Please stand if you can and recognize yourselves. Thank you. And 2 are not here today, the Valley Regional Educator, as well as our HRM Central Regional Educator, so I recognize them as well. Michelle mentioned I spent 6,570 plus days on my own, and I lived in an existence which I called Black solitary confinement because it was simply me. And I put that up there to show you, just to give an example of my past. Oops, going in the right way here? That little corner written text there, I want to show you that. I'm going to read it for you. Jackie is one of the best workers in the class and achieves well. I have pointed out how regrettable it is that she does not develop an interest in reading outside of school assignments. If she could do this, she would be a superior pupil. Jackie is a wonderful little girl who has had to face some problems not met by most children. She has met them courageously and still kept her sunny disposition. I admire you greatly, Jackie, and thank you for the splendid work, for your splendid work and the example you have been as a representative of your race. They should all be as proud of you as I am. And that was my grade 6 principal. He was my teacher and principal, and he felt that I was a good little one. I'm saying that. I didn't know that at the time until I read this in my adulthood. But so I share that with you because Nova Scotia, this is 40 plus years ago, so we're not that far away from it, and that gentleman is long gone, but those thoughts and attitudes persist and remain. So in our CAEPs, one of the things that I felt I needed to do when I came to the Black Educators Association is effect change as an educator. And our programs across the province are for students anywhere from 5 years to 16. We primarily have kids who are 8 to say 14 for the most part. By the time they're 15, they become one of our peer tutors. So we have students, and then we have employees, we have staff, but we can't have staff without students, and we can't have students without staff. So we're here also to hopefully have you understand why it's important to enroll your kids in the CAEPs if you have one in your region. And if you don't, you can see or reach out to a regional educator and please say, hey, can we have one of these in our region? So the overriding philosophy for the CAEPs, and Darlene and Jermaine, you can certainly hand those out if you don't mind. The theme is, and regional educators, you can join me here, is be supportive of our CAEPs from A to Z. 1 + 2 = 3 Black families and educators strengthen learning. We are taking our students from A to Z, and we are helping them understand the words, the language, the letters, the meaning, the words, the language of origin, sentence structure, language usage, definition. How do you start with a word, you move into a phrase, you go to a sentence, then you build that to write a paragraph, you move on to a story, a research paper. When you are learning language, it's first auditory, you hear it. Before you're born, you hear it. If your hearing's intact, you hear it. Then you learn to speak it, you learn to read it, and then you learn to write it, pretty much. Now, that's kind of general. There may be another way that someone has done it, but for the most part, that's how it happens. You don't come out knowing these things. Someone's got to teach you. And if it's not taught, then you're guessing. It's all guesswork. So in 2004, I came to the association and I had to direct the programs, and I thought, what one thing would have the most effect on the students across the province? So language, it was it for me, because there were so many age ranges, 50+ communities, but well, we have about 30 CAPs across the province. Every community was different, and how can I affect change across the province wholly? Well, language. So for me, I grew up in a white neighborhood, the only person of my race and my ethnicity for 18 years. So language was secondary, Black language, Black English, Ebonics, home language, Black vernacular English, whichever way you want to choose to call it or describe it. So for most Black families and children, that's their first language. For me, it was secondary. I learned standard language first, and then I learned Black vernacular English second. So it was my second language. My mentor was Dr. Barbara Sizemore at the time. I had no Black teachers my entire life until I came to the Black Educators Association. So my teachers were people like Pat Barton, my first Black teachers, Brad Barton, Robert Upshaw, Sheila Lucas Cole, Melinda Day, Karen Hudson, Ken Fells. Those are the teachers who helped help me become who I am today. Whether that's good, bad, or great. I love myself now. I thought I was despicable as a kid, but now I love me. So they had that impact. Those were my first Black teachers, the Black Educators Association. So I thank you very much because, whoops, I'm going backwards. You helped me become who I am today. Dr. Sizemore said, this is an excerpt from 2007 when I wrote the plan. After 4 years, it took me a year or two to put it together, and then 4 years to put it in place along with the unit of the regional educators and the members of the association. So it was me writing it, but it was the community putting it in place. So Sizemore said in this was a document I put in 2007. She said, she talked, where I want to point to you is, she said in a speech that she had a higher calling. She was a superintendent of schools. She said, I have a higher calling than educating children, and that is uplifting my race. Further, she added, I did not understand that in order to be superintendent of schools, I was to give up my higher mission. More than 3 decades later, in my opinion, her poignant depiction of an American school system in crisis seems to best articulate the current way of life for African Nova Scotian learners. What do I mean by this? It's not the first time I said that it is my belief that African Nova Scotians are still relegated to the status of second-class citizens and seen as irrelevant. Irrelevant to the point that they are removed from the decision-making process of our own education. In some ways, major societal institutions in Nova Scotia still reflect and support the oppression of Blacks. And sometimes I have to wonder if this is an intentional method of social control. So the regional educators programs and CAPs, teaching methods or pedagogies, are delivered from perspectives understood from the following exemplary individuals. I'm not talking about the individuals today. I did point out, the next question I said, how is this method of social control achieved? This is 2007. Black family values, beliefs, practices, celebrations, traditions, and if you can believe it, in 2007, even language are not comprehensively included across school districts in Nova Scotia. Fundamentally, Nova Scotia school systems continue to fail in their attempts to lessen the achievement gap between white learners and black learners. But this is not to say that there are not those who are working tirelessly away, unnoticed, trying to effect change for Black learners. So the strategic plan emerges with a pedagogy that is directed at the appreciation for Black or African Nova Scotian learners at home language and ancestral as primary, with superior second language acquisition or standard English and foreign language study relegated to secondary. Instruction relies on the African Nova Scotian cultural immersion for programs while providing exposure to learners and educators of African descent in our global community. All right, everybody got that sheet that was passed out to them? So now I want to just tell you a little bit about the background to what happens in the CAPs. The program, the Comprehensive Educational Strategy, was developed and designed, implemented, written, and what's the word? Dedicated, thank you, dedicated to Dr. Barbara Sizemore, because she taught Spanish-speaking students to speak standard English, and she said, well, you can't get students to understand and teach them how to speak if you don't speak their language. So she had to teach herself to speak Spanish in order to teach them the best. So I had to learn Black language in order for me to teach students in my schools standard language. And that means all languages, irrespective of where you come from. In Nova Scotia, we have 52 plus communities, and in each community, you're going to find variations, colloquialisms, terms of endearment, all kinds of phrases that I had no clue about. So I had to immerse myself into that culture. All right, so the CAPs have two standards for learning. The first one is to develop a strong and positive, that's on your chart there, the last page. If you pop to the last page of that handout I sent, and I do have it, if you want to share later, Sylvia, with folks online, you can certainly email it. It's on the last page, it's a chart, it says, be supportive of our CAPs. So in our CAPs, and it's up on the screen there for those who are online, the center part says an African Nova Scotian cultural immersion. To the right is two standards for learning. I just said the first one, to develop a strong and positive character as a primary focus, with all other parts of the curriculum relegated to secondary. And then two, to enable students to fully appreciate their African Nova Scotian cultural history while identifying with people of African descent in our global community. And then in the middle, it says ANSCI, that's just an acronym for an African Nova Scotian cultural immersion. In the CAPs, we appreciate their home language first, and it's primary, and we immerse them in standard language, and they are both given equal value. Neither one is lessened. All right, so I can't go into a whole bunch of things, but if you look down, academic and culture, concentration, rigor, and practice, we want students to become bi-dialectic, or in some cases we say bilingual. It just depends on which preference you did. I don't really care which one, I just want you to be able to do this, this, and this. And secondary, mathematical literacy. So our students are brilliant. They know how to add, divide, and plus and all that money, but they might not know how to read the question. So if they can't understand it, that's why I said it's from A to Z, 1 + 2 = 3. You have to see the digit, you have to be able to read the written word. And then we expect our students to become linguistically competent. They have self-efficacy, they love themselves, and they feel good about what they do. And finally, it's a world language elementary enrichment program. So what I handed out to you are the results. So over the years, we have 12 strands. If you look at the last page again, it's still up there. There are 12 strands. And one of those is the REP Provincial Spelling Bee. It's down towards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 from the bottom. I want to dispel a few myths around that. There's some folks who say, what's the value of that? The spelling bee is not where I ask someone to stand up. You immediately spell loquacious right now. What does that mean? That's not it. You are learning word development. You are learning what the language of origin is. You learn sentence structure. You're learning to write. So I like to say reading. The 3 R's years ago were reading, which is an R, writing, it's WR, but writing, and arithmetic. We took the A off in arithmetic. But I like to say reading, writing, and articulation. Take the A off, because math is supposed to be in every subject, it's there. It's not over there and we ignore it. So reading, writing, and articulation are my 3 R's, and that's what we expect in our CAPs. And the good news is, over these 20 years of working in this plan, we are seeing the results. So now I want to quickly go, because I probably have 1 minute left. Right. Figured. The trends and disaggregated data. Folks want to know, how is it working? Well, the trends and data show you we have, each year we identify champions, first, second, and third in the B, but all the students that attend learn to stand in front of people, they learn to debate, they build confidence, and sometimes they get upset when they misspell a word. Well, actually, they start bawling, some of them, but you know what? After they misspell it, they go, oh, now I know it. So that's the idea. It's just, it's a little hurtful, but anyway, over the years, we've discovered that boys and girls, and it didn't matter if you were Black, because some students have been in our CAPs who are not African Nova Scotian, if there's space. So it didn't matter of the age. We've had 8-year-olds nestled with 15-year-olds. They're all doing the same. So instead of a huge gap, we're seeing they're going along like this. And everybody's helping each other. We didn't tell them to do that. The students are doing it themselves. And so I think I have one more picture to show you. Just one more. Yep. Oop, skipping all that because I talked about it. Don't need to go through all that. This is the 2025 Provincial Spelling Bee champion, along with the other students from the region in Cape Breton. And if you notice, they're all guys, except for the staff person in the back. Those boys did so well and cheered each other on, worked so hard, and they're African Nova Scotian, Indigenous African Nova Scotian, not students who weren't born in Nova Scotia, have immigrated to Nova Scotia, and they're all Black males. And it's a language-based activity, and where do you see all that? That's it. Thank you. So enroll your student, oh, one more. Oops, this was important. We need, yesterday, Paul Ash talked about getting more funding. I saw this on my way one day. It said $15.25 an hour, and I think people that fry fries at McDonald's deserve that, but our staff need more than $15.25. That's why I put that up there.
Thank you. And I'll come back to Jackie after we hear from our next two speakers, depending on the time. So I'm going to move on to Karen Hudson. If you don't know Karen, let me tell you a little bit about Karen. So Karen is from the community of, my bad, Dr. Karen Hudson. But you know, sometimes in this community, you know, people from back in the day is what we used to say, our little expression, back in the day. We were just calling each other a name, or sis, how you doing? And how did we meet? We met through a few of these programs that we probably didn't call it this back in the, the 80s and, and stuff. But that's how we met. That's how we introduced each other to, other people around our circles and stuff. So Miss Karen, Dr. Karen Hudson. I have an African name too, Abena. Abena, there you go. There you go. So, there you go. So she's from the community of Cherrybrook, Lake Loon. She has over 28 years of experience and knowledge and is a seasoned educator. She is a principal of Auburn Drive High School with Halifax Regional Center for Education, and she's the creator and the founder of the first Afrocentric math cohorts here in Nova Scotia. You got to give her a hand for that. So in 2019, she was nationally recognized as one of Canada's outstanding principals by the Learning Partnerships for her groundbreaking work in incorporating Afrocentricity into the public school math curriculum. In 2024, she received that honorary doctorate in civil law from St. Mary's University for her educational and community work. She also received an honorary degree from Dalhousie University in 2025. We all got to hang around you a little bit more, eh? So Karen is passionate about uplifting youth to help them create opportunities to use their voice for change, and is actively involved in community development work. And she's also the proud mother of 2 boys. So Karen, tell us a little bit about your Afrocentric cohorts, and they're in the urban area, but you started with math. So give us a little bit of overview of that. And is it working?
It's working.
Thank you.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the invitation, and thank you for that, I guess, the little words about who I am. The reason why, there it is right there. I think that I got to go a little bit back before you say it's 2018. The reason why we start this, because there were some individuals that impacted my life in terms of mentors. So I'm going to go back to the Cultural Heritage Youth Group. in terms of their leadership. I got to go back to ASAP, and you heard about that in terms of their leadership. And then I have to go back to the work of the Africentric Learning Institute in terms of their leadership. And then I had the privilege to meet Dr. Malefi in 1993, and I actually brought my original book that he actually signed. And he said that, you know, in terms of keep going forward and let the ancestors impact you and move you forward. And so that was the, I guess, the beginning of why I didn't want any other child to feel like Jackie said, and maybe others in this room actually felt, being the only person within your class and not feeling that you could actually do math. And so we were trying to, when we started, debunk that myth that we weren't brilliant, because we know we're brilliant, that we can create excellence, because we are creators as well, not just spectators, we are creators. And so that was the initiative in terms of really starting that. We talked a lot about the Saturday school concept through ALI, and people in terms of our government was afraid to actually say, have our own Saturday school. And so I said, we had to become a little bit more creative in terms of what can we do. And so looking at the data, this is when I said to myself, along with Freeman Edwards, who was a math teacher who's passed on now, that we have to change that music. Because our children were walking in the hallways, and where were we seeing them? In the lower math classes. We were not seeing them in academic math, so we weren't seeing them in pre-calculus or calculus or academic. We were seeing them more so in the lower level classes. So the first thing, we want to debunk that myth that they couldn't do it. So our development of this cohort in 2018 was intentional. It was deliberate and was forceful in terms of we had purpose in terms of what we wanted to do, because we wanted to make sure that our children was not going to be another statistics where they're just going to continue to do the lower level classes. And so here we wanted to improve the education of students of African ancestry and to address those concerns. We focus on the Sankofa bird, which Dr. Malefi also spoke about in terms of going back, knowing your path, and moving forward, taking all that greatness, that understanding of our history and our culture and our identity, and making sure that you apply it to who you are as Black people and African Nova Scotian. We want to make sure that our children know that they have a history that is victorious and that they can celebrate that and to be proud about who they are in their own skin. Regardless of what your shade may be, you are people of Black African ancestry. And so that's what we were trying to do, is to make sure that we build it on those principles. We want to make sure it was communal, it was collective, and that they understand that, you know, Malana Karanga, those principles can be applied to your everyday life. And then we want to root it in self-knowledge, because we said you need to know who you are. Because in order to tackle what's happening within our education system, and we already talked about the racism, and we already talked about it systemic, but in order to tackle that, you have to have a strong sense of cultural identity. You need to know who you are as a Black person, so that when they come up, you have ammunition to move forward with that work. Okay, so this is the purpose of our work here. We said that it's rooted, it's from an Afrocentric approach, because we try to make sure that the leadership of the individuals, now you know within our education system, we don't have a lot of people that look like us. We're trying to get there, but again, we gotta be intentional in terms of doing that. So that means you have intentional in terms of recruitment and retaining those teachers within the education system. And also providing the type of pedagogy and the method courses so that they understand what we're talking about. So you need that leadership, you need that perspective. We want our children to create their own narrative. We have lots of narratives that have not been documented. And so our children need to have the opportunity to say, this is what it's saying about me. I need to change that. And so within that, we always look at the data, because you know data gets the funding. Data, and we're being realistic, because they want to see 2015. I said before it started 2018, but the conversations were happening in 2015, 2016, 2017. And then we just say, you know what we're gonna do? A little trial basis and see what they say. If you are really intentional in terms of what you're doing, you can actually place people or structure them, if you're the leader, so I was the principal, without them knowing everything that you're doing because you're in control of your school. So that's what I took a chance because not everybody was on board. Not even our parents were on board. You have to train them and teach them because they didn't know about what Dr. Malefi is talking about and what we've been saying about Afrocentricity and what does it mean in terms of understanding your culture and your history and bringing people to the center of who they are. And so that's what we're talking about in terms of making sure we educate our children. And so within that, we have those three E's in terms of expectations. Our expectations, so our parents were thinking that we're creating something where we're lowering the standards, that we're doing this affirmative action again. And I said, oh my gosh, let's try to think about hiring that expectation, having the rigor. Our children can reach there in terms of we can uplift them, see that wasn't me, to that standard if you have those certain expectations. And so we have to engage them in that, and we have to make sure that we empower them in terms of moving forward. We say to our children that, oh, it's okay if you fail math, but do we say it's okay if you fail reading? So why do we allow them to say, I can't do something when you push through it? They have to have that tenacity to push forward. And so within that, we move from that philosophy of I can to I can. And then again, we're developing relationships. We can't do it by ourselves. I already told you. We don't have the representation of teachers that are within our system. So we have to go to community. It has to be communal. It has to be collective. And so developing relationship with parents and community and making sure with each other. And then moving beyond that status quo. So moving beyond the status quo is meaning that, again, just saying that you don't limit yourself. Do not limit yourself to only that little box. Think outside of the margins. What else do you have in terms of opportunity? And we have to tell the truth and the history of what's happening within our society. We know that our students live within a system that's racist. We know that there are teachers that don't understand our culture and our history. We know that they have to change some of their practices and way of doing things. So we have to make sure that we're able to tell our truth from our own perspective and giving children the opportunity to have a voice. And so it's powerful to see when they're together that they feel safe within that space. I started off saying that I didn't want them to be the only person within the classroom. So we intentionally made sure that they were placed together and that we talked about when you're in there, what are you doing? We talk about being your brothers and your sisters' keepers, or your brothers and sisters' keepers within that classroom as well. So you're not just laughing when somebody's not doing well. How do you uplift them? How do you make them feel good? How do you create that agency amongst them? This is what we are trying to do within the Africentric cohort. So that space to be and to be who they want to be. Not to always to do, but what do you want to be? They don't even know sometimes until they get through it and they start working through it and they say, oh, I actually can do that? And they get surprised. And so that's what we're trying to do in terms of feeling important with that. Getting teachers to scaffold their own learning, to change their mindsets about our children, to look at them, but also provide them with the resources and the support that they should do. My time is almost up and I'm keeping it low. Oh, the next one. Okay, there was supposed to be another one which is supposed to have a couple slides that says, tell you a little bit what they said. Yes, please. Okay, well, maybe you don't have it. All right, I would just want to, I'm glad I have a little backup. I just want to give you a couple little things that the students did say to me, and I wrote them on my little paper here. So one of the things I just want to end off with is because I want you to hear the voices of the students. This is what they said to me. I had a slide there, but anyway, didn't say, stay true to yourself. This is what the students are saying to me. How do you feel about it? They say, I feel strong about the collective work, and I feel that I can deal with different issues. I feel that the learning experience is important to me. It's an environment where people who look like me, I feel proud to be part of it. I feel that I can conquer the world, that I can cultivate. Well, they didn't say that word. They said, I get to understand my history, and that my history is just more than just Black history, but also African history. And they said that I didn't know that before. and that we can rely on each other for strength. Those are some of the things that students are saying about being in the Africentric cohort. If you have students out there who feel, and parents that don't know, tell them to actually come forward or question us or reach out, whatever, that, you know, that self-knowledge grounded in who they are in terms of their own experience is really critical, so they can understand that there's power. And that's what we're trying to do. We want to envision our students that they do have power and they do have strength. Thank you, Sylvia. I got Michelle. I was calling her sister.
So again,
Oh, sorry, Dr. Michelle.
So some things in our Black community is that when you have sisters that have the same name as some people, you get called everybody else but yourself. So that's my whole life of being called one of my other two sisters. Yeah, my sister's name is Sylvia. So let's move on. And I know I got the flag back there to say we have only 5 minutes left, but y'all, I'm sorry. I got to move on with our next two because we need to be fair in our space, and that's something about being Black. I got to let you finish. All right? All right, so let's move on to Crescenda. So Crescenda is going to talk to us about, again, academic cohorts, but in the rural area. So Crescenda McBride is the coordinator of African Canadian Education Service with the Annapolis Valley Regional Center of Education, with over 20 years of experience in race relations, social justice, human rights, and she's dedicated her career to creating equitable educational opportunities. As a woman of African ancestry, Crescenda is informed by her own lived experience and extensive academic background. She's a proud graduate of Mount St. Vincent University, Africentric cohort of school leadership and lifetime learning, and holds degrees from both Acadia University and Mercer University. As her role as a coordinator, she's been a driving force behind innovative programs that celebrate African ancestry and promotes Black excellence. She introduced the Kente to all African ancestry grade 12 graduates and the AVRCE through the Student Support Worker Program. Under her leadership, the AVCRE has launched 3 impactful Afrocentric cohort programs focused on everything from academic achievement and well-being to promoting the skilled trades. Her work is a testament to her unwavering commitment to developing and promoting education that honors the history, the culture, and the people of African ancestry. So besides professional life, she enjoys exploring the outdoors, spending time with family, conversing over good food, and she has published a few articles, including Afrocentric Yoga and its effect on Nova Scotia educators' understanding of the social curriculum. Reflects her passion for holistic well-being and education. Everybody, introducing you to Crescenda.
Good day, thank you. Not on? On? Is it on? Okay. Good day, thank you very much. Yes, my name is Crescenda. I'm the coordinator of ACES, African Canadian Education Services in the Valley Board. Behind me, I'm just gonna have like a bit of a pictorial highlight of our Africentric cohort. Yes, within my write-up, it highlights about the Kente. The Kente was brought into Annapolis Valley by myself. I didn't really think it was going to happen, but it happened, and it just continues. It is about identity. It is about awareness. Student support workers talk to their students about the colors of the Kente and having racial pride. It was kind of our launching pad. Between that and Dr. Hudson and her launch with her Afrocentric cohorts, the comments that my parents went to a segregated school, and that was the best school that they ever went to when they were younger, the power of it, the teachers, the relationships that they maintained. Because of all of that, we launched into having Afrocentric cohorts within the Annapolis Valley. Behind me, you'll see an image. We have 3 of them. Our newest one just started. The one to my right-hand side is the original one, the Horton cohort, and it really just shows the students that give back. These students, we started out, yes, with academics in regards to literacy and numeracy, but the students also have a task of giving back to the younger ones. The picture that was on the left-hand side was a picture of our elementary cohort, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So the Horton started off really to provide opportunity for the students to increase their education. They didn't know what they didn't know. What? Take math, academic 10, like my mom and dad or my brother, like I'm not taking calculus, I don't know, like, or better yet, Susie, my friend, is taking this math at work, so that's what I'm taking. Oh, no, you're not, right? So you will be taking academic courses. We started off with literacy and numeracy. They found a wealth of information, things that they did not know. The students are, for the Africentric cohort at Horton, are required to take 7 classes together. Those 7 classes, yes, are math and English. They take English 12 African Heritage, so we learn about ourselves, but they also take ACS 11. ACS 11 is the History, African Canadian Studies 11. That came about because me questioning the students, why don't you take ACS 11? They laugh at us. Who laughs at you? I am in the Napas Valley, so sometimes administration thinks about diversity, so you only have 1 black student in a class. So if that 1 black student's in the class and the teacher's talking about whatever they're talking about, usually the enslavement period, you know, the black kids are feeling bad, they don't want to be in there. I'd rather take Canadian history, where we don't learn about ourselves at all. So what if I put you together? Oh, if you put us together, that's different. The students have learned about the Black Panthers. They learned about Mr. Day. And the Black Panthers, no word of a lie, they thought it was a movie. It's not a movie. Like the and so they were really quite intrigued to learn these types of things. But they said, we would have never asked those questions in class if we were just by ourselves. This is our class here of 2024 and some members of the 2025 class. All of these students have, majority of them have gone on to university. Acadia, St. Mary's, Dalhousie, some have gone on to U of T. Mayanne Carvery, the woman on the right with Mr. Parker, he's our student support worker. He's like a cultural mentor, but a student support worker at the school. Mayanne has gone on to Carleton University. She also painted that picture in the back. So that give back. So they do murals. The Africentric cohort at Horton, they've developed their own squash team. They travel around, they go to New Brunswick, they go to PEI. They created their own scholarship, but you have to be in the Africentric cohort, you have to play squash, and then you can get the money, right, if you're selected. So they're quite ingenious, to be honest with you. They give back to community, whether it's working at the food bank. They give back to our schools by going in and talking to classroom students about African heritage and African heritage people. That particular presentation in the middle, they're talking about Viola Desmond and showcasing her. And then what's so wonderful is that these students graduate and then they come back and talk to the cohort. So those 3 students, the far one, Ellington, she's at Dalhousie right now doing medical science. Sierra is in the middle. She's at St. Mary's University right now doing business. And the young man, he has most recently, he was working at Bruce Cheval's. He was trained as an EV mechanic. However, he just stopped that and he has decided to go on to pursue what he wanted to do, which is criminal justice. So he's training to be an RCMP officer. In West Hants elementary cohort, so we have little cohorts, little people here. These folks came about, it was not my idea. The principals in West Hants and the Windsor area, we have 5 elementary schools there. The principals actually came together. Crescenda, can we put the black kids together? What? For what? For well-being, because when they go to that middle school, they don't know one another and they're just like looking and staring. They don't have no network, and so they really wanted to come together for well-being. So we did it. The first year was well-being. In year 2 and 3, we have infused more academics. We work a lot with Imatet Legacy Academy. They're great coming and doing coding with the kids. The kids had an opportunity to learn about their community, talking about their last name, but also community members from West Hants. And Tristan Sampson's one of our student support workers in that area. He also helps us out. He came in and talked about that. They did the DNA of a strawberry, which is a slimy, nasty little thing, but they loved it because they're little people, so they like squishing stuff. But so DNA of a strawberry and talking about agriculture in that whole area. We hope to do some drumming and different things with them too. But as my secretary said, when the group picture came out, those are black kids? Yep. That's our African Nova Scotian learners up there. They really are. And power to the people, because if you say that they're not, they will tell you. All right. Our newest one is at Avenue High School. We just opened this in September. It is a skilled trades Africentric cohort. Within that Windsor area, a lot of kids really want to go into community-based learning. We have 2 O2 programs. We have a skilled trades program, but noticing that no Black kids were in there. Now, that was a systemic issue, so we are working through that. So I hope the principal have a really good idea, and we have a skilled trades program now. So these Black kids, there's 13 kids in the program, 10 that are really dedicated and come all the time, and 3 that we need to, help along. So we'll be doing that. These folks only take 6 courses together. They're still in high school, so they need to take whatever they're interested in. But they build the big motels. They learn how to do drywall. They learn how to put electrical boxes in. They learn how to put windows, doors, plumbing, it's very interesting. I was hoping to be in the class, but they're taking ACS 11 together and English 12 African Heritage, and we're also having them slotted for a high skills major certificate once they graduate. This is really first voice, and I'm going to ask Randy, I'm going to need your help, I do believe. Some type of way I need to hit that link. Delmore Buddy Day, Delmore Buddy Day. Ryan, sorry. So we asked the question to them is, how has being involved in the Africentric cohort impacted your academic and well-being and your understanding of identity, your identity, or the African Nova Scotian community or culture? You can hit that link. Can't hit it? Oh. So either way, similar to Karen, we asked the students, and some of the things that they said. First voice is really important. So I'll just pick out 2. We asked this to them the other day. One student, she says, I think the Afrocentric cohort has helped me in so many ways, like doing my best in school. The cohort has made it easy for me to learn. It's easy for to learn based on the class sizes that they put me in. I have social anxiety, so the classes being smaller and being paired with your peers makes it easier to get attention from your teachers. And also not feeling like you're the odd one out or the only Black person in the class. It has made me see my future opportunities for myself, whether it's from going to colleges and university or other places. Because of the cohort, I've made more friends. I also have teachers that make it a fun experience. Mr. Wiseman makes math easier for me, also because I've always struggled with math, and he tried his best to help me out. And then the last young man, that was from a female. This young man says, I think the Afrocentric cohort has helped me explore myself, like my love for drawing and story, as well as not being afraid to talk about things I love, like my favorite shows, movies, and music. I think the cohort is a great way for people to show their interest without feeling judged, and the guests that they bring in also let me learn more about my heritage. So that was just a Padlet that the students did. They all had their opportunity to kind of say what they liked about the program. And that's about it, folks. It is all about community. We have talked a lot about that here. For community engagement, we've done a turkey drop, taking turkeys out to parents. Before we start any program, we always try and go out with the teachers and meet the parents and talk to the parents that way. We do a check-in. Because of the student's voice, we decided on ACS 11 and English 12. We try to empower our students through readdressing inequalities by having them come back and speak to students. The Horton cohort, they designed social justice. Those guys are funny. They designed a module for RCH incidences. So when there was a derogatory term said in school, they designed this 4-point module that and they work with administration and student services. If a student said a derogatory term, you had an option, instead of taking a 5-day suspension, you could take a 1-day, but you had to take this module. With the module, there were PDFs, there were videos, songs, all this stuff. At the end, that kids have to take a test. When you take the test, crescendo, they got to pass it by 80. But what if they don't pass by 80? Then they do it again. It's like, oh, we also say that they have to go to student services because you know what? Something really might be the matter with them. So they need to go talk to someone about why they did this in addition just to administration. It's gone very well that way. And over the past several years, since we started in 2023, we've had 36 graduates from Horton, 25 being of African ancestry with 11 being African Nova Scotian, 7 going on to NSCC, 4 just working, 2 are at home. And at home is various because not all of our students have their permanent residency. So it's kind of expensive to go to NSCC. We had 1 in apprenticeship and 22 went on to university, Mount St. Vincent, Acadia, Dow, St. FX, St. Mary's, Carleton, and University of Ontario, Toronto.
Great work. So I want you guys to think about something. I'm going to just introduce our last person, Dr. Casey Monroe Anderson. But as I'm doing that, I would like you guys just to think about, as we move forward, we know that a lot of your work stems from the BLAC Report, which is why we're here this weekend. But think of something when we were talking about that call to action, which we mentioned yesterday and even sometime today, what next steps you think should occur as we go into our conference. And our conference is in May of next year. So give us an idea of that once we're done talking to Kesa. So if Kesa's on the line yet?
I'll just read it instead of trying to remember. Greetings, DBTLI family.
Did it start yet? Okay, just before you start that, let me just introduce Kesa. So again, she'll be talking about the Africentric BED program. So Dr. Kesa Monroe Anderson is a passionate, community-oriented educator, a researcher, and a change agent who practices an Afrocentric, anti-racism, Black feminist approach to leadership and education. Having served in various capacities of responsibility and leadership in government, nonprofit organizations, and post-secondary institutions, she is currently the associate professor in the School of Education at her alma mater, Acadia University. Here, Dr. Anderson Monroe leads the school's Master's of Education in Inclusive Education, Equity, and Social Justice cohorts designed to build and develop Nova Scotia's capacity of equity and social justice leaders in education. She is also the coordinator for the Afrocentric Bachelor of Education cohort for African Nova Scotians and person of African descent, which started in January this year, 2025, and responds to the need for equitable representation of Black teachers in Nova Scotia's public school system. And you heard here today that we need more Black teachers in our system. So once Kesa has her spiel there, we're going to talk to a couple of students about their experience in the BED program. So, Kesa.
Greetings, DBTLI family, extended family from South Africa and the United States, and fellow panelists. It is my honor to speak with you today about the Africentric Bachelor of Education cohort at Acadia University in my role as coordinator of this history-making program. The Africentric Bachelor of Education cohort, which began in January of 2025, is a Nova Scotia born and bred example of Sankofa in action, which entreats us as African people to go back and get it. Not only is this program a journey back home to the centering of our knowledges, culture, values, history, interests, worldviews, and perspectives as African people, but it also responds to the BLAC Report's clarion call to post-secondary institutions responsible for teacher education programs, holding them accountable to fulfilling their role in preparing teachers to take on a leadership role in combating and eliminating systemic discrimination in education. As the BLAC Report states in Recommendation 26, and I quote, "Children need role models to build self-esteem and a sense of cultural pride. Nova Scotia desperately needs more Black teachers and school board administrators, not only where there are Black students, but to teach in homogeneous areas as well, end quote. Therefore, the Africentric BED cohort program is a Sankofa response to the BLAC Report's 1994 heralding of the need to address the underrepresentation in African Nova Scotian teachers and teachers of African descent in Nova Scotia's public schools. Through Ujima, collective work and responsibility, the Delmore Buddy Day Learning Institute, our community partner, lifts off the page aspects of the BLAC Report's recommendations to the Minister of Education. Recommendation 15, and I quote, make scholarships immediately available to assist Black youth to undertake teacher training to help redress the underrepresentation of Black teachers in the education system, end quote. DBDLI, through the funding support of the Department of Education, is providing full scholarships to all 11 Africentric BED cohort students. Taking their response a step further, DBDLI also provides financial support for transportation and accommodations as required by these students to complete their courses. In collaboration, Acadia University is fully funding all textbooks for these students. Also, a part-time Africentric BED cohort administrative support assistant, and my role as program coordinator. Additionally, Acadia University is providing opportunities for applicants to the Africentric BED cohort who did not have the prerequisite requirements to begin the program, and also those requiring math and science courses to enter the program to attain them in an Africentric classroom setting. These courses were fully covered by the university, and they were taught by an instructor of African descent. The process of developing a new Africentric BED cohort program has proven fruitful in providing more accessible pathways for African Nova Scotians and persons of African descent currently working in the Nova Scotia school system who wish to attain a BEd degree or courses towards prerequisites for a BEd degree. The ABC consists of 11 students from across the province, those from the Annapolis Valley Regional Center for Education, Chignecto Central Regional Center for Education, and Halifax Regional Center for Education. Students are currently in the last semester of their first year in this 3-year program, which will continue for an additional 2 years. Students are being taught by instructors who embody Africentric and Ubuntu values and philosophies, including African Nova Scotian professors and professors of African descent. They are also experiencing a blended modality in-person and online courses, with some in-person classes being held in African Nova Scotian communities and African Nova Scotian community spaces, as well as on Acadia University's campus. Thus far, classes have been held in Upper Hammonds Plains, Gibson Woods, the Delmore Buddy Day Learning Institute, and in Beachville. What sets the ABC program apart from other BEd programs is that all students enrolled are currently employed in a regional center for education and working in public schools across this province. These individuals have a deep commitment and passion for equitable and inclusive education through their work towards the improvement of the education sector, their school environments, and for the benefit of African Nova Scotian students, students with disabilities, equity-deserving students, and all students. Their work has been instrumental in helping cultivate a culturally responsive, culturally relevant learning environment which benefits students of all backgrounds, their teachers, staff, and administrative colleagues, and positively impacts the school-home community interface. The skills and expertise of these ABC program pre-service teachers, students, in addition to their work and lived experiences, make this cohort unique, noteworthy, and one that Acadia School of Education faculty anticipates learning much more about and from over the course of this 3-year program. The ABC program and the resulting independent student initiative have sparked excitement across Acadia University's campus through this development of transformative learning pathways which help address historic systemic barriers to teacher education programs. Particularly, planning and organizational conversations towards the ABC led to prior learning assessment and recognition being acknowledged formally for the first time in the university's history, and this is across all disciplines. Further, the School of Education, where faculty are collaborating with DBTLI on this ABC, are especially interested in exploring additional possibilities for future programs that engage the contributions and support the growth and development of African Nova Scotians and persons of African descent who wish to access a BED program and enter the teaching profession. Conversations about other cohorts are also brewing. Sankofa, go back and get it. We are passionately heeding the call as we respond to the BLAC Report's recommendation 19 on incorporating anti-racism or anti-racist principles as a key element of the philosophy of education through Afrocentricity. As we respond to recommendation 24, recognizing the Black experience in Nova Scotia, Canada, and the world by including the accomplishments of Black people from Canada and elsewhere as regular subjects throughout the year, not just in February, in the curriculum. And recommendation 25, as we provide leadership in the development of a central curriculum which recognizes and honors the existence of other cultures in an integrated and thematic way, rather than adding a separate course. Additionally, we in the School of Education at Acadia University continue to recruit and to hire African Nova Scotian and part-time staff of African descent and instructors to reflect the recruitment of African Nova Scotian BED students of African descent who will ensure the racial and cultural diversity in our BED programs and in Nova Scotia across the public school system as teachers of tomorrow. We are grateful for the community efforts that live on in and through the BLAC Report's research and recommendations. A stream never rises higher than its source. We pledge to continue our Sankofa journey with passion and excellence. Now, you will hear from the Africentric Bachelor of Education cohort students.
Thank you. So again, in lieu of time, can I get these students to stand up, please, so that we can see you? Look at that. When you see Black excellence in a room, this is what you're supposed to do. You look at each other, you smile, and if you have to give each other that clap on the back just to say we appreciate you, that's what we do. So due to time, I'm going to ask 3 of y'all to just give us one word or one statement about how you feel or how you felt when you entered into this program. So we'll start right here. Go ahead. Come on up. Come on up.
Ubuntu, I am because we are.
Awesome. Next. Come on up. Next.
Speak your truth.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Give one more here. One more. Come on. Come on. There's somebody.
As empowered.
Empowered. We got Charmaine Willis here, works in the school system as well for some time. Coming up, Charmaine, let us know.
Transfer for more. Transformation.
Transformation. Awesome. Give the guys a hand here. Give them a hand. Thank you. I want to say thank you quickly to the panel, but I'm going to give you 1 minute. That call to action, what would you say?
I wrote it down. To seek, I always believe in a verb, or actually the word is demand, appropriate and sustainable funding for proven programs of excellence directed at Nova Scotia's Black students. For the example, I showed you that $15.25 that you get for frying French fries. That's great, but we need to get more funding. And then secondly, our students, they meet twice a week, and we receive nutritional funding. So our staff do amazing things with $30 for nutrition, and 20 students or 60 students are in front of them. $30. So seek, demand appropriate and sustainable funding for those programs that have proven successful.
And in terms of the call of action, I was just thinking about it, but I really believe that in order to maintain what we're starting, we have to continue to build on it. So we have to take those leaders that we have in place and develop appropriate training to mentor individuals who are now currently within the system, so that way that we can impart some of that knowledge to them. So you can't just get rid of everybody, but you got to take some of the knowledge that you have, and then you have to try to make sure that we create that pedagogy and also that curriculum material, so that the people that are in our children's now, in front of our children, that they can have that learning and get that expertise from those individuals.
That's a tough one. Just off the top of my head, the BLAC Report always makes me think of how I have my position and student support workers have their positions. And I know now with terminology, we have a lot of student support workers, whether it's attendance support workers, it's Mi'kmaq Indigenous support workers. I really would like us just to continue to stand on our own, as the BLAC Report highlighted. And I hate to think that if we have to get a new term, then we should get it, because now it's just the terminology that we are using, or that the regional education centers and the Department of Education is using, and taking that information from the BLAC Report and not giving it credit.
Thank you. I'm going to say thank you to our panel members here. Appreciate your time and your expertise on sharing your information with us, for the work that you guys have been doing to help support our Black youth that we have in the school system. And also those that are older, people like me, you guys still support us as well. So there's no timeline for when you can stop learning. You continue on that trail of learning. Thank you everybody for staying with us today. Lunch is ready, and I think Sylvia might come up and say something else. So she's done? That's right, evaluation forms. Remember, it's always the 5+ for us when you come seeing us. But thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Blessings, blessings, blessings. Thank you, South Africa.